This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
The off-season break is over. The silly season has ended, the testing is done, and now it's time to get down to brass tacks. As Daytona does with real sports cars, here in the virtual world we begin with an endurance race at this famed facility. With it being the start of a new season, there will be fresh faces, and there will be those who get a rude awakening about the skill level in this series. We'll see who kicks off the decade with a victory as we get ready to watch the 2.4 hours of Daytona, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Adam Lindgren and Adam Young. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Daytona is as valuable to fans of road racing as it is to oval enthusiasts. Most of that is thanks to its flagship race, the 24 Hours of Daytona. To find out more about what happens when you take a high-banked oval and turn it into a road course, let's head down to our track guide. Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 turns spread among 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year. You see a few of the ins and outs of Daytona, but to tell us a little bit more, Adam Lindgren, of course, has a scoop on the details about this place.
Definitely. Daytona International Speedway has featured many legendary races over the years, but tonight will host the Major Series American Region Opener on its 3.56 mile or 5.6 kilometer sports car course. This 12 or 14 turn course, depending on how you count it, features many IMSA series over the month of January and will host both the iRacing and real Rolex Daytona 24 in the coming weeks. As Joe said, tonight the drivers will tackle 2.4 hours or 142 minutes of multi-class racing, with these three classes having their own unique styles and strategies. The now historic single-car Daytona prototype class is by far the fastest over the course of the lap, but struggles on the bumpy infield and transitions to and from the oval. The GTEs, on the other hand, are most well equipped to handle the many features of this course, but each car will have a different strength throughout the lap. The GT3 class struggles with the infield, but their low downforce allows them to soar on the high banking, often keeping up and passing GTE cars if they're close enough. While the DPs have about 8 to 10 seconds per lap over the GTEs, the GT3s are only 1 to 2 seconds slower per lap than the GTEs, so expect a lot of interclass battles between them. Our colleagues at SimSpeed and RaceSpot saw good races and no shortage of surprises in the international and European regions in the last 48 hours, and I expect no less from the Americas tonight, Joe.
And as you can see, we've got things a little bit different here because this is qualifying. This is not the race proper. They're doing a top three shootout here, and we're starting off with the GT3 cars. All three of them will be out there at the same time, but each with their own little bit of track, of course. Lyndon Swaby, Kevin Hill, and Steve Driscoll are trying to sort out how the front row and how third place will be determined once we get to the green flag in a little ways time. As we ride on board with Lyndon Swaby. He was the first released. He's coming out and around off of the banked oval. One thing that I found interesting, Adam Young, was that they don't have an opportunity to reset if they mess up this warm-up lap. So they essentially have to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're essentially out on the racetrack, you are on the clock because we got two other classes that we've got to go through. So you got to take care on the warm-up lap. But now Lyndon Swaby now going in anger is Steve Driscoll, Kevin Hill continuing to come around, but already looking at seeing some guys, seeing what they're able to put down here for tonight.
You can see Lyndon Swaby working his way through the kink now. He's in the infield portion, taking it down into the Western Horseshoe. The kinetic driver looking to try and take this pole as he gets ready to head on to one of the more relaxing points on this track, coming back onto the banking. So let's head over to Kevin Hill now, see how he fares in this portion.
Yeah, Kevin looked like he's doing actually pretty well right now. He's pretty smooth on the brakes going into these corners. He's not using quite a bit as much of the track as I'd expect the GT3s to be using here, but going all the way out to the outside of that yellow curb, looks like he's running very smooth right now. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be really tight between these three. It's going to depend on who gets the best exit onto these oval portions.
Of course, Unorthodox showing very, very well. They're one of the teams that is expected to do well this season since we're missing some major players, at least in an official sense. Driscoll also racing for Unorthodox as well as Kevin Hill. So 2 out of the 3 racing for that team. And you can see we've got Swaby getting ready to finish up. So what is he going to be able to set here? Lyndon crosses the line. His lap is going to be a 42.6. Back to Kevin Hill. What has he got underneath him?
Yeah, already rolling through the middle of 3 and 4 now. And so far, I actually think just kind of the eyeball test, Joe, I think he's running a little bit quicker.
All right. Again, it's a 42.6, and it's going to be a 42.9, so a little bit slower.
Ooh.
What about Driscoll?
Yeah, Joe, I've been watching Driscoll, and he clipped the grass a little bit on the exit of the bus stop chicane. Hopefully that doesn't invalidate his time, but he's still driving at full speed, so we're going to see what it's going to turn up here. He's going to cross the line in a couple seconds.
Still, the pole belongs to Swaby. It's a 42.4. That's going to be good enough to put him up to the front. So Steve Driscoll manages to take the pole for our GT3 class. Already, we've got our drivers out in the GTE class getting ready on their warm-up lap. Haven't started yet. Up at the front of them is Strodbeck currently, one of our very, very fast drivers who I'm pretty familiar with because I used to race with him in Turn 2 way back in the day when I actually got to run some of these endurance events.
Yeah, Strodbeck, of course, running the Porsche. Waring also in a Porsche, and Torres is going to be in a Ferrari. So, unlike our GT3s, not a single all-make group right here.
We talked about the teams, Unorthodox and Kinetic being the 2 strong ones that we're expecting to fare well. The 2 major players, the one especially that dominated and has a perfect score in the in terms of getting the team's championship, is Alliance. They don't have an official presence as far as we can tell, and then riding shotgun as well won't have an official presence, though many of their drivers are still competing this season. So expect them to at least share information with one another
Yeah,
and
of
still
course.
be pretty good.
And obviously I can expand on the ride and shotgun. We're still going to be out there, and I know a lot of people have asked me about that the last few weeks, but we're still going to be out there, but we'll still show up as independent, but we'll still have ride and shotgun schemes. Our drivers are still working together. It's just not all of us are going to be running full time.
Watching Strodbeck work his way through the infield down into the western horseshoe. Lindy, the one thing that I think is interesting about this track is it looks simple when you look at it from above, but I found it to be actually pretty challenging as far as road courses go.
It's extremely challenging. As we've been watching Strogbeck go across, we've noticed that he's locked up into both of the horseshoes. So that might draw a little bit off of his time. He locked up the inside front tire on both of those. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects his time. So as Strogbeck comes onto the back stretch, Mark Torres is going across the front stretch and crossing the line now. He's going to start his flying lap.
Yeah, Torres is well behind them. I wonder if he got a little bit of a late start. Strodbeck, in the meantime, has actually just gone through the bus stop chicane. So from here on out, it is foot to the floor and keep that steering wheel as steady as possible.
Yeah, I think Torres is trying to take time, maybe try to warm those tires up just a little bit more. So we'll see if that ends up playing dividends for him. But Strodbeck looking quick here so far. We'll see if locking up his tires takes a toll.
Time's going to be a 1:40.6 for Brian Strodbeck. Then we turn our attention back to Andrew Waring. And the number 2 machine is already on the banking through NASCAR 3 and 4. Another unorthodox driver. That's one thing, nice thing about unorthodox is they're extremely easy to pick out with those paint schemes. His is a 1:40.8, and that's not good enough for pole. He's about 0.2 off.
Yeah, so now it's time to see how this lone Ferrari does. He definitely took a lot more time on his warm-up lap, which is totally fine, totally legal to do. Here he comes up at the bus stop. Let's see how he handles.
Looks good so far. And I didn't see anything close to an off track through there. If anything, almost could have maybe gone a little bit more aggressive through it, but the Kinetic Racer is onto the final portion.
While he's coming on to the final portion, we're starting to see our DPs roll out.
Torres down into the line. The time he has to beat is Strodbeck's 1:40.6. As he crosses, it's a 40.7. Strodbeck is going to stay on the pole for the GTE class. Torres does slip into second. It's less than a 1/10 between himself and Brian, though.
And
so our 3 out on the track now. Sorry, there is Travis Warling, Liam Quinn, and Scott Corbin there, Lindy.
Yeah, it was less than a quarter of a second between those 3 GTEs. So very impressive times that they put in. Very consistent. As we see, we're looking at Liam Quinn now. He's going around the top of the banking.
Yeah, he's been the only guy I've seen so far actually use the top of the banking to start his lap. So I think that's some of that IndyCar experience that Liam Quinn is so famous for starting to come out there.
That's a good point. This is a unique track, and I wonder if that oval knowledge can come in handy for anybody, at least.
You mentioned oval knowledge. There's Travis Waring riding the outside.
There you go. So Travis Warling, this is what's going to make today difficult. We've got Andrew Waring and Travis Warling out here.
That's what I meant today. And I've raced against Travis Warling now for how many years, and I still mess it up.
Yeah,
I'm sure we're going to get that wrong plenty of times.
Definitely. So Scott Corbin coming around. Look at that. He's going on the top side as well. All these DPs going to that high side to start off their laps. This is going to start Scott Corbin's flying lap here as he comes onto the front stretch into the dogwood.
Yeah, Quinn's already on to NASCAR 1 and 2, it looks like. And Travis Warling is getting ready to join him there. You know, Corbin is a teammate with Quinn, so that could have been something that Quinn communicated with him. Both of them riding the line.
I'm sure Kinetic works pretty well together. They talk a lot. I'm looking at Corbin's lap when he was starting out just a minute ago. Just to get this point across first, he was going through turn 1 and already looked a little wobbly. And Liam Quinn looked a lot more stable when he went through turn 1. So we'll see if Corbin's able to make up for that time. I think he lost here to Liam Quinn.
Yeah, but Adam. Liam Quinn lost a little bit of time going through the bus stop because he got a little bit squirrely on the entrance of that. So let's see what his time is.
There you go. Bounces out maybe.
37.8 for Liam Quinn. Travis Warling is out of that bus stop chicane, and he's got to try and go faster than a 1:37.8 flat perfectly there for Liam Quinn. Warling riding for the unorthodox team crosses the line, 36.9. That's going to put him up to the top, and now it's up to Scott Corbin to try and make the difference.
These times are a little bit closer to the GTEs, at least here through qualifying, than I thought they might be. So that's exciting to see for some multi-class action later tonight.
I'm not too surprised because I figure it's going to be very difficult up at the top with how competitive these drivers are. Scott Corbin on the Kinetic Racing team crosses the line, and it is a 37.2. Only good enough for second, but a 0.3 of a second difference up to Travis Warling. He has got something special out there. And that is the end of our qualifying, but not the end of our pre-race show. Got a little bit of stuff here to talk about before we get, of course, to the main bit. First of all, let's go over the points from last season. We're going to kick things off, of course, with the Drivers' Championship. And Matthew Thunhorst made the dream come true. He took the championship over Travis Warling, who we just saw competing here today and take the overall pole. He and Trevor Clement, of course, had a very close fight. That 36 points is nothing, considering look at how many Matthew Thunhorst earned there. That is incredibly close coming down to the very end. Lionel Callisto, who should be racing today, though not sure if he's going to be competing for a whole season, wound up fourth. And then Liam Quinn, who we saw wound up third in the qualifying today, rounded out the top five. Liam is known for his IndyCar prowess, as we heard a little bit earlier. Adam Young, of course, you've got the teams championship to go over.
Yeah, teams, of course, always present here in the majors and always puts on a good show. Alliance, they've been a mainstay the last couple of years, but won't be a mainstay this year. They took the championship in the team standings just like what they always have, but this year we're going to crown a new champion, and you've got to think that an Orthodox, Kinetic, they're going to be some front runners. Dog Bear will be out there as well. Can they gain some of the ground that they lost last year? It's going to be interesting. And V Apex, of course, I don't think, at least I haven't looked to see if V Apex will be out there here again this year, but I'm going to assume they are. They always like to have a presence around there. Now, of course, there's also another championship that's going on, and actually those races here tonight will be going on at the same time. And this year, it's a separate thing. So let's talk about the Sportsman title.
Yeah, definitely. Sportsman last year was ruled by Kyle Murphy with only 150 points over Ernie Lundvig. If you haven't watched majors before, that is a very small gap, as well as Nick Kuhn, only 11 points behind that as well. So that was a very tight battle for the lead in Sportsman, but it ended up being Kyle Murphy coming home with it, with Peter Hebron and Mark Redeker going home with 4th and 5th. And if you want to catch them, you can jump open another tab and open up the OSR network to watch that Sportsman split tonight.
And then finally, it doesn't feel quite right without Bill giving the points here for the Legends, but we will anyways, as Brian Bennett managed to take that one over Brian Barnes. It was the Battle of the Bryans with Wayne Hutchison doing fairly good himself. It was actually not too far between Brian Barnes and Wayne Hutchison come the end of the season. Bob Beltrami as well, less than 40 points, or just about 40 points, separating himself up into the top three. Brian McGreevy rounded things out, but he was a little farther down, finishing 5th in the Legends. That's for the drivers that were 55 and over competing in that one. Finally, we want to give you a quick shout to the charity for this race. They have a charity for every race in each season, and for this one, it is for the limb girdle muscular dystrophy. You can go to curelgmd2i.com if you'd like to help support them. The way that they support these causes themselves is essentially drivers only get one qualifying chance in this series. If they want to try again, well, they can donate some money. Once they donate some money, they get to go back out and try and improve on their qualifying. And it's a way to not only encourage drivers to do something nice, but it helps give people a chance to try and improve on their qualifying position. If we know anything about drivers, they always want to try and get a little bit higher up the grid. With that, I believe we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll have the race itself proper coming up soon. Stick around because we have the first round of the 2020 Majors coming your way. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. The drivers are warming up and the grid is set, but we'll get to that grid in just a moment. Before that, let's tell you a little bit about this race itself. We are in round 1 out of 14 throughout the season. It will not be the same cars as these all season long. They're going to basically emulate all the real-world major events throughout the season. And of course, today they've got the DP, the GTE class, and of course, the GT3s racing here. It is 2.4 hours. That's 144 minutes. If you can't do the math real quick, 2 hours, 24 minutes is how long we'll be racing. The incident cap at 40 is also got 2 penalties in there. 24 and 32 incidents will get you a stop and go. And then they have a spare car, as they traditionally do here in the majors, to make sure that everybody can get to the finish line, at least to their best effort. This is once again brought to you on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and subscribe when you get the opportunity. Very easy to do so. If you're watching this on YouTube itself, just scroll below in the video. There's a big red button that says subscribe if you haven't done so already. Just got 30 seconds left here in the warm-up, and then we get to go racing. Lindy, I'm excited for this one. The new season of the majors, and as we've seen, things have been shaken up quite a bit.
Yeah, they have been shaken up. We've had shakeups in the team points. We have a lot of new people. I watched the Majors podcast, and they were mentioning about 50% of the drivers are new to the series, so it's great to see them here. A lot of fresh faces and a lot of familiar faces here in the Pro Series.
Should be awesome to see. And there is the checkered flag in the warm-up. So as we wait for the grid to populate itself, we'll get you that off in just a second here. We got 3 classes to go through, so there's a lot of cars. Your starting order here today has Travis Warling on the pole, as we mentioned. Scott Corbin starting behind him with Liam Quinn in 3rd. The DPs have Cy Andra to the outside of row 2 with Dick Mueller starting in P5, Alessandro Dalladon in 6th. Then it's Bill Daly starting 7th and Ray Partridge in 8th. Eric Smith, P9 for him with Adam Halleck in the 10th position. Michael Morley will be 11th and Eric Antilli in 12th. William Fletcher 13th and Marcus Tracy 14th and Ryan Bueller 15th. Last 2 drivers in that DP class, Reed Miller and Justin Kirby.
All right, your GTEs. Well, we got Brian Strodback. He's going to be starting on the pole there. Mark Torres with him. Andrew Waring will be out there along with Christian Challoner. Christian Challoner qualifying 4th in class, and then along with Matthew Thunhorse. Lionel Callisto will be next in line alongside Matt Santel. Anthony Pisano from the PRL is out there. Chris Long likes to him in row 13. Row 14 is go Thomas Buckley, and then Samuel Harris, Richard McClure, and Jose Malbron. And we've got Vincent LaHerbier, Robert Tarbox, and Jeff Schmeier rounding out your GTE field.
Steve Driscoll takes the pole in GT3 with Lyndon Swaby alongside him. Kevin Hill and Wade Hayes round out the top 4 with Brian Bidett in the top 5. Nick Coon's going to start off 6th with Jimbo Pfeiffer, Wayne Hutchison, Richard Holt, and Ray Farlow on your top 10 in GT3. Then we have Aaron Corey, Caleb John Lavender, Ryan Walsh, Brian McGreevy back there in the back of the pack with Bruce Jones, Brian Barnes, and Daniel Knight.
50 cars are taking part here today. They've already started on this warm-up lap. This Porsche pace car takes them through NASCAR 3 and 4. 2.4 hours that they are going to have to work their way around this place with 3 different classes all sharing the track at the same time. It sounds a little easier than it actually is, I can tell you from experience, as the Porsche pace car is now on the tri-oval. As it gets ready to peel away, Warland will have control and can go whenever he pleases once that pace car is in. Waiting, and he goes pretty quickly. It's a good jump. Green flag is out here for round 1 in 2020 of the majors. Down into turn 1. Warling's good start has got him well clear of the 2 kinetic teammates. Corbin a little bit farther around the outside ahead of Quinn is going to be able to keep that 2nd place. Looks like the DPs so far so good. Let's go to the GTEs.
Yeah, GTEs going 3 wide into turn 1. Strawback getting split by Waring and Mark Torres. looks like Torres is going to take the line going into turn one. He's going to take the full lead heading into the horseshoe. These guys started on the green flag. It's heading over the GT3s.
Yeah, Steve Driscoll got caught out being on the high side, so that allowed Lyndon Swaby to get through, but Steve is under heavy pressure from Brian Bennett and Wade Hayes behind him. Jimbo Pfeiffer trying to make a move on Kevin Hill and gets collected. Kevin Hill gets into the side of Jimbo Pfeiffer, but he corrects himself. Now it's 3 wide coming off the corner, but they're all clean after that.
Oh, you got a lot of racing to go, guys, and Kevin Hill is actually off track trying to save it and get out of this mess. He keeps going in 8th position here in the GT3s, but boy, is there some excitement here at the start in this slowest class.
Yeah, the GT3s definitely started out really excited. I thought Kevin Hill was going to lose it there in the grass for a second. Now it's up to Wayne Hutchison to try to hold him off as they start to enter the banking for the first time.
And this is just 2 minutes into this race, guys. This is really dangerous, but here they go in the DPs. It looks like we're getting drafting packs now.
Yeah, credit to everybody involved in that to keep things going worse, because that could have been a big wreck there at the start for a lot of drivers. Up at the front, as you mentioned, Liam Quinn and Cy Andra are getting ready to change positions here with the draft helping them along. Andra, a known quick driver in prototype cars, and that's going to get him 3rd place there you see as just behind back in 5th. Dick Mueller already looking on the kinetic machine of Quinn.
Yeah, and that's one thing that me and Adam were talking about. Before we even went on to air tonight, was just the maturity level, how that's increased year after year as far as how drivers getting to know each other, everything else. This was the cleanest start to a 2.4 for the majors that we have ever had. There wasn't a single major incident through the entire field on lap 1 in all classes.
And a swap for the lead in GT3. Sorry there, Lindy. Looks like Swaby has gotten back in front of Driscoll, so that's changed around. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the back of the GT3s, even though it's a little bit scrappy, everyone's still going straight, going in the same direction. And even though it's Kevin Hill with having some problems, he's still managed to keep going straight, and it doesn't look like he's lost any aerodynamics on that thing, so he's doing a good job just keeping hanging on to it at this point.
Adam, they know this is probably the only point where they're not going to have to be racing and dealing with the other classes too, which we head up to the DPs right now, whirling ahead of Corbin.
Yeah, biggest thing these guys have to remember, though, is that it is still also a very long race. It's 2.4 hours here. Of course, it's shaved off from the 24 hours of Daytona. There's kind of a play on that with 2.4, but there are no driver changes. These guys are in the cars for the entire time, and you have to pace yourself. I mean, I've ran this event every year that we've had it, except for the first year when it was Northwest Majors, and, well, I wasn't invited yet. But after that, every year I've been in this thing, and every year it's tough to get going. As Travis Worling really has to fend off a very hard charging Scott Corbin there. They almost bumped doors.
I think they did bump doors. There was contact on my screen, and Cy Andra has been having connection problems there back in 3rd place. He's been disappearing a bunch here on my computer, so this is certainly not faring well for the two around him, Liam Quinn and Scott Corbin.
Yeah, I was just looking at that too, Joe. It actually looks like the numbers, at least as far as his connection, are fine. It's just for some reason he is blinking in and out. So not quite sure what's going on there, but those guys definitely have to take it easy. Hey, Adam, I hear that you were saying the GT3 leaders catching the back of GTE already.
Yeah, they are starting to, but I actually like to go to P6 in the GTE class. Brian Strudbeck has been really struggling right now. He's back to P6 in that class and getting passed a lot. He's just got Anthony Pisano going on his inside as well as Matt Santel. So something's wrong with that car.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like he's handling as well as he could. In fact, already Thomas Buckley's starting to catch him as well. Those guys in front of him are just cruising. Go ahead.
Sorry, the lead of the DPs, the leaders just got together. Scott Corbin and Travis Worling just got together through the bus stop. Now we've got Cy Andra going by on the high side. Cy's still blinking a little bit, but this pack has now bunched back up to 6 cars. But man, they were really close. They collected each other a little bit going through the bus.
Wow, this has brought a lot of them together. We've got Liam Quinn back there. Eric Smith now in it as well. And then that's Dick Mueller going up on the high side, looking to see if he can get 3rd place away. 2 by 2 by 2 as they come down into turn 1. This is all for the lead, and we're still only 10 minutes into this race. Less than 10 minutes into this race.
More like More like 6. This is insane. Nice big pack. Cy Andre kind of got loose a little bit there in turn 1. That allowed Warling rather to get up there and try to at least set some distance between himself and Liam Quinn. But man, that got jammed up.
Meanwhile, let's head to the GTEs because we haven't given them a lot of love. Lionel Callisto just got passed by Andrew Waring, and that gives him 4th place. In fact, another position going down for Callisto. For some reason, this BMW dropping back similarly to Strodbeck.
Yeah, Lionel's falling back a little bit. Looks like he's... it's possible that these guys might be on a fuel-saving strategy to try and make it to the end on just 2 stops. We saw a couple of GTEs struggle with that in some of the other regions if they go all out. So it's possible these guys are playing a strategy game even this early on in the race.
The other question, too, is maybe setup of the car. Some of them may be looking at the long run, and here early in the race are still trying to get the thing warmed up.
That's entirely possible, especially with the DPEs. They're known for taking a little while to really kind of get going. But here we've got something going on in GT3s.
Yeah, Steve Driscoll's catching up to the back of Lyndon Swaby now. And this is after Lyndon Swaby got passed on the first lap. These two have been actually battling nose to tail for quite a bit of this race. And while the back of the GTs are starting to fall back to them, these two are starting to catch up to one another. But Steve Driscoll already lifting quite early for the bus stop, already thinking about fuel management, Joe.
Sorry, we got to go to Scott Corbin in the DPs. Almost had our first incident. Amazing that we've gone this far without anything serious happening. This kicked off in front of him with Eric Smith nearly losing the car. That checked up everybody behind, and poor Scott Corbin got the worst of it into turn 1. Not sure if we can get the replay here. Here we go.
Yeah, he definitely had to fight to keep that thing out of the inside wall there. That's really easy to do if you make any kind of contact. So good driving there by Scott Corbin.
And before that happened, I was watching while you were talking about the GT3s. Quinn had another go at Warling. It wasn't successful. He's still behind the number 90. Travis has had the measure of this field, even though they've been climbing all over him.
Hey, I really want to give a shout out here real quick to Dick Mueller, running in 4th there in the DPs. I've said it before that I've felt that the last 2 years that Dick Mueller had to have been the most unlucky guy out there. He's lots of skill and just bad things always end up happening to him in some of these races. But today, starting in 5th, he's still hanging in there in 4th. He's got a real good chance here today in that Dog Bear DP to be able to try to do something and maybe even go up there and contend for an overall win today. So really good start for Dick Mueller.
And Liam Quinn almost tried something on Travis Warling there into turn 1. Travis Warling really he's doing a good job of blocking, but Liam Quinn looks like he actually wants to get by. A lot of times in other regions, we've seen the DPs just kind of go line astern in these first couple laps. That's not happening here in America.
No, the action is hot up here at the top of the DPs, but we got to go to the lead of the GTEs because Mark Torres and Matthew Thunhorst, our reigning champion, are very, very close. They've left Christian Challenger behind, the reigning champion over on the European region, trying to give chase, but you can see there is only tenths of a second between the kinetic driver of Torres and Thunhorst.
Yeah, Thunhorst is he's hunting right now. He knows that he can get the better of Mark Torres with just a good lap or two, but there's also the dynamic of just trying to save a little bit of fuel too, so...
Apologies for losing picture here for a second. We'll just get some stuff sorted out behind the scenes, but we'll keep you filled in on what's happening. Mark Torres still up in front as he gets ready to head back onto the oval ahead of Matthew Thunhorst. Challenger, who is chasing them, he's about 1.2 seconds back right now. He's actually said to me explicitly that part of the reason he came over to the Americas, he was looking for more of a challenge. The European region's still very difficult, but he wanted to try and face the best of the best, and he felt that was found here.
Yeah,
Joe,
keep in mind, too, of course, with the way the Americas and the way this majors is set up, the Americas is the oldest region. So of course you have a lot of the drivers that have been here in the series for the longest. They're in the Americas. It's not necessarily saying that the Europe division is better or international division is better. It's that these guys have been running these races now for so many years, and just the experience level kind of adds into that too. So that's where Challenger wants to be.
Oof, on screen, trying to figure out who that was that we just saw go over the grass there in the bus stop. It was one of the GTE cars, one of our kinetic Porsches. It's Christian. Oh, that was actually Challenger himself.
Does that qualify as a commentator's curse?
I suppose. I think it was Challenger. That's who we just saw on screen there.
Ooh, need to go and look to see what happened. But Lionel's front end is a little beat up here.
And he's down in 8th.
We had a big accident in the GT3s. Lyndon Swaby just hit the wall coming through turn 1.
All right, we're going to get a replay of this.
He's going to have to pull out his spare car, Joe. This is a really rough one. It seems to happen just kind of on his own, but there was a slow GTE ahead of him. We're going to watch it happen here through turn 1.
Oh, his netcode. He ended up being netcoded. He was still a good 3 or 4 feet off that GTE car, and then all of a sudden he just shoots toward that inside wall.
That is an absolute shame. Trying to figure out, that was Robert Tarbox, and Robert racing from out of New York while Lyndon Swaby is racing out of Canada. So not terribly far apart unless they're on opposite coasts here. And Swaby is very damaged. He just spun. If we come back live, and we are live, he's on the oval and he's going to take a tow.
Yeah, and this lead in the DP class is really tensing up. Liam Quinn tried to make a pass on the outside of Travis Worling, and that's a problem. We've actually had another incident in the GT3s. I believe that was Steve Driscoll that just ran to the back of Richard McClure.
It was coming out of the bus stop. McClure had an accident on his own. He lost control. No, he didn't have an accident on his own. Samuel Harris got into the back of him. That sent him into the tires in the bus stop, and he tried to return to the track just as there was a pack of GT3s coming through.
This is huge pace implications for Steve Driscoll. He's going to have to make sure that he hasn't lost too much straight line speed as he battles Wade Hayes for that second position. This is bad news for Steve. He might have to take his spare car early as well.
The front end damage on that Mercedes doesn't look terrible. He's hanging there with Brian Bennett. So he might be okay if he stays in the draft. But look at Brian Bennett. He's one of the very few Audis in the field, and he's leading this thing right now.
And as all this is going on, we've even got a battle for the lead in the DPs, and it's going to go 3 wide. Well, maybe not. Looks like Andra's not willing to risk that now. He backs out of it as still we've got Quinn challenging Worling as he's done multiple times. He's going to try it around the outside. Still holds on. Wheel-to-wheel stuff. Oh, and they almost come together. There is a little bit of contact. Worling keeps it together, and he keeps the lead.
That was a good play there by Liam Quinn, knowing what was happening. He was already off the gas a little bit more before they actually made contact. That made everybody be able to get away from that scenario safely.
Wow. So things have been incredibly tense here at the start, and I talked about the level of competition in this series, and this gives you a good idea. So we come around back onto the oval. Travis Worling going to lead Liam Quinn. Oh, and that was a mistake from Cy Andra. A little bit of a bobble. You talked about how great Dick Mueller is. He's going to get onto the podium with that.
Yeah, still a long way to go, but that's looking good for him. And Cy Andra will end up getting shuffled back a little bit. I like the run, though, that Liam Quinn has. But, hey, let's go a little further back. How about Eric Smith and Ray Partridge? Another Dog Bear car there with Ray Partridge. They're going to go side by side at the bus stop.
Eric Smith took quite a bit of that inside grass area. That might be a slowdown. He's still on the bottom of the track, so it appears that he's going to be able to hang on to it. But that was really close between Ray Partridge and Eric Smith through the dogleg.
Of course, I mentioned in the pre-race show that I didn't know if VB Apex would be out there just because I hadn't seen him. Well, Eric Smith's out there. That means VB Apex is out there.
Apologies if we're not following the action in your favorite class, because we've already also missed that Christian Challoner is leading the GTEs. So at some point, he got ahead of both Thunhorst and Torres. Those three continue to streak away from everybody else in that middle class. Right now, watching this action. Well, as there was yet another mistake from Syandra. He had gotten back past Dick Mueller, and he gives it right back. We've jumped over to the GTEs now.
Yeah, we're taking a look at Mark Torres as he's going across here. He's just trying to keep up with these two right now. Christian Challoner's been showing his stuff. But look at this. Matthew Thunhorst with a good run. We're going to look at Mark Torres right now from the back of his wing. Look at this. Matthew Thunhorst going to the high side, trying to make Christian Challoner pick a lane here that he's not wanting, but Christian Challoner is holding it down on the brakes and able to get through turn one clean.
Hey, how about that lead right now for the GT3s? Just looking at the board, I saw it, and indeed, Bennett and Driscoll were side by side for a moment, with Bennett able to reclaim it, but looks like Driscoll might get a chance to re-attack here going into one. Oh, I got to get around the slower GTE there. Robert Tarbox holding him up just a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly being a bit of a headache for the top of this group. Driscoll and Hayes stay in line behind them. This could be 4 cars soon. Richard McClure, well, no, actually McClure is in the GTE class as well, sorry.
Look at this, man. We're this far into this race, and still all 3 classes have first and second at least within a second of each other. In some cases, actually almost a half a second in all 3 cases. And then in GTE and GT3, you still got to mix in 3rd place in there.
And things just won't settle down everywhere you look, because Andre and Mueller keep fighting. Go ahead.
Ray Partridge just had trouble. He just hit the pit entry wall coming through turn one in the the DP clap.
Yeah, he unfortunately lost it under braking. We're going to try and look at the replay here. This is going to look silly, but I've done this myself. It's embarrassingly easy.
Yeah, our team got cost a 24-hour race like this a few years ago, the exact same way. And actually, our driver at the time went in there a little bit more hot, and then the car ended up sitting perfectly on top of the pit wall, perfectly balanced, just sitting.
Just incredible stuff. Go ahead.
And it's really easy to do that. You just get a little bit too much rear brake bias in the car, and turn one is actually you kind of can end up turning while you take that braking zone. And so if that happens, you can unsettle the car, and that's what you get the back end coming around for.
Syandra, though, continues to fall back, and he's fighting through the bus stop right now, and he's going to lose a spot to Eric Smith, and also now under attack from Dick Mueller, I believe, ended up losing a spot there a moment ago, too.
And Michael Morley just spun in the bus stop chicane, actually.
Yep, that's the number 06. And he's turned around completely. This is a single car incident. Managed to keep it out of the wall, it appears, though. But I wonder if we could get the cameras on the front of Dick Mueller, because from my angle, it looks like he ran into something. Maybe not. Okay, looks clean here on these cameras.
Yeah, it's for some reason, though, Joe, he's bleeding spots right now, all of a sudden, So maybe what you're seeing is something that actually happened, but as far as actual damage, I can't seem to find it myself.
And here's an interesting strategy play, Joe. Bill Daly has come in from the DPs and come into the pits. This looks like it might be a regularly scheduled stop for him.
Think he's working it potentially backwards on strategy here?
That's definitely a possibility. It's something you can try and do, because a lot of these DPs will have a short run to the finish that they'll have to do on fuel. So backward strategy might be at play for him.
Maybe getting himself out of some of the action that we've been seeing, which I kind of wonder if that's what Mueller's doing. If he's trying to save a little bit of fuel here, just get out of all the craziness that's going on and remove the risk.
Something's going on here, too, with Anthony Pisano. I think he might have had a slowdown. No, he was going dreadfully slow there for a little bit.
And Steve Driscoll's currently fighting Brian Bennett for this lead still. Steve has climbed his way back up front, even with that front end damage, and is right on the back bumper of Brian Bennett. We know how fast these Mercedes are on the oval, so it's going to be fascinating to see if he can catch up to the back of Brian Bennett and make this pass on the oval. Let's see whether he has an opportunity going into the bus stop or going into turn one, but he's got to stick with him here through the infield.
As we watch them now come out onto the oval again, we'll get a feel for whether or not this is going to erupt. Robert Tarbox is the third one in line. He is a GTE car, so this is not for the same class. Hayes and McClure also are mixed in there. So McClure being GTE, Hayes being GT3. They start to pick up speed, 160 miles an hour as they come off of NASCAR 2. Right on board now with Driscoll. Down and through the bus stop one more time. You can see how similarly paced the GTE cars are, because as we've been riding on board with Driscoll, you haven't seen Tarbox even get close to going by him.
Yeah, it's he took him forever to get around Tarbox, and now he's just kind of hanging there right now. So it's a tough situation for them.
It's going to look to the ins, or to the outside rather, as they go too wide down into turn one. Looks like a little bit of a lift there from Steve Driscoll. He knows he's got a lot of race left to go. He's not going to try the risky maneuver yet.
Hey, DP leaders might get ready to change again. Liam Quinn looking on the outside of Warling. Looks like Warling's going to be able to slide back in front of him before they get to turn one. Actually, it's probably Liam letting them back in front because they knew they had the GT3 of Brian Barnes ready to get by.
And still looking for a place to go. Now traffic comes into play as Warling sneaks underneath Brian Barnes, locks him up a little bit down in the International Horseshoe. Quinn got awful close to the right rear of the number 90. Didn't make contact, but clearly keeping him under threat.
And a lot of these battles are still hot and still raging here in the GT3 classes of the battle for 9th and 10th that they're about to go by. And these guys are battling for position, so they're not going to want to give them a lot of time. They're not going to want to let Travis and Liam through. But here we go. Ray's going to let them both through, back off a little bit, and here comes Travis and Liam. They're going to go through and pass Ryan Walsh here on the...
Yep, they've told the slower classes to stay low. The DPs will pass high. Same thing with the GTEs, though not quite to the same extent. Sounds like we got another driver pitting a little bit early. Ray Partridge and the DPs. Remember, he had some damage, though, because he hit the inside wall on the pit exit.
Right, and I think that ultimately, too, was playing things backwards. He's sometimes he'll do things just a little bit different than the rest of the dog cars, just as that way if something doesn't work out, they at least have somebody in a good spot, and it gets him away from a little bit of the traffic he was in too. So I think it's overall a good play there by Ray, just to try to be able to get some good clean laps in here at this point.
Well, it appears Adam Halleck has spun coming out of the bus stop chicane as well, and he's in the DP class in 12th place currently, getting passed by Michael Moorley. But he just had some trouble coming out of there, so he's recovered and got back going now.
Speaking of DPs, man, that battle is still raging there between Warling and Liam Quinn. Liam Quinn was alongside of him again going into turn one, but now that they round the first horseshoe, heading to the kink, Quinn's kind of fallen off a little bit. Quinn's just waiting to pounce, I think, right now. He's just waiting for lap traffic to go his way. Oh,
he gets him.
He gets him up just a little bit. Quinn's going to let him have that position back.
He's flashing his headlights now. I don't think Warling liked that move. But we see some more contact here between Warling and Quinn for the lead of the DPs. Does Quinn now back it off a little bit and try to be a little less feisty, or does he keep in it?
Oh, he's going to keep in it. I mean, it's just with the way, and none of it has been intentional. Some of it's just been the way the lap traffic's going through and all that. And I think Warling knows. I wanted to say that headlight flashing was more of a thank you for letting me back by and letting me have the position back more than anger. I think these guys are having a well of a time and having a lot of fun right now.
Quinn certainly one that I think has a chance of taking the overall championship, depending on how he performs from race to race. He's got another run coming out of NASCAR 4. They've got lap traffic. That's Nick Kuhn and the GT3 machine up ahead of them. So they're going to go 3 wide with Liam going up to the high side. He keeps trying this time after time on Warling. But at what point does it finally work? Looks for the grip on that outside line. And actually, he's going to stay with it, but he wobbles as he tries to get the power down.
Oh, man. And if he hadn't wobbled right there, it'd been great. Warling put just his left front in the grass just a little bit, enough to make him lose just a touch of traction. So between the wobble from Quinn and the loss of traction from Warling, they end up coming out even again.
Let's head back to the lead for GTE as well, because Challoner and Thunhorst are still very, very close. But I almost wonder if this is a lot more polite than what we've been seeing at the top of the DPs, because I haven't seen much in the way of Thunhorst going on the attack. And you can see they're still dragging along Torres. The gap to Strodbeck, who was on pole here in the GTEs, is already 5 seconds behind.
Yeah, you don't think right now, too, that, that might very well be it, that these guys are being polite, because there is going to be a certain amount of fuel saving that goes on with these guys here today. And if you're running in a draft, well, that's great for you. Of course, the one that's using up the most gas out of that group is Challoner out there in the front. But fuel saving, that could be important at the end of this thing, depending on how the cards fall.
So come back onto the infield. Thunhorst and Torres continue to ride in the draft of that number 37. Best of luck to Christian, who's going to be getting ready to start, of course, the Oval Peak Championship, the Peak Antifreeze Series, the pro level here on the oval side with NASCAR. Just to tell you the kind of talent that number 37 driver runs with.
Yeah, Challoner is fast. There's no doubt about that. He's one of those guys that can be fast in just about anything you put him in, whether it be road course or oval. And yeah, he's a peak driver, but he could be just as quick in a F1 car or any GT3 car as you're seeing out there today.
Continue on. Given a little bit of love here, but as I said, doesn't seem like the action is big. So let's go down to the GT3s as well, because Brian Bennett and Steve Driscoll continuing their fight. The 51 chasing the number 71. They also approach NASCAR 1. They've now got both Tarbox and McClure behind them in the GTE cars and not hassling them. I think those two really aren't interested in trying to disrupt this fight.
I am just amazed at the pace of Brian Bennett in the Audi. There's a reason why everybody is in Mercedes here, and you're going to see it too in the official iRacing 24 hours and stuff next weekend. The majority of the GT3 cars are going to be Mercedes, but you've got Brian Bennett out there in the Audi, and I think he's one of only 2 in the field, and he's leading the thing over top of a Mercedes.
We had a wreck with Scott Corbin. He's the number 54 in the DPs. He's fallen to 13th. I think he lost the position to Marcus Tracy. And he got into the back with William Fletcher. This is going to be down into the Western Horseshoe. Actually, did he avoid contact here? Let's see if we can find it on our replay. Apologies, we're having just a few issues, of course, with some of the drivers on track. Unfortunately, it looks like we won't be able to see it, but it was awful close. Fletcher is able to keep going. Corbin, as I said, falls to 13th. So come back to our lead here in the DPs now that we've cycled through. What a wild first stint here that we've had for round 1. It's kind of amazing that we haven't had more drivers fall by the wayside with just how aggressive the racing has been.
Oh, I know it. I mean, it's been tough out there, and this is one of the more competitive 2.4s that we've seen possibly ever. Very few major incidents. I want to say everybody. See if Pisano was unable to return, at least he hasn't yet, when he pulled off suddenly. Everybody else, I think, is still on track. So it's great to see.
As we watch the top 2, yeah, Lindy, they went side by side into the bus stop. We didn't see it on screen, but Quinn continues to hassle Warling.
Yeah, definitely. They're really, really close together, and Liam Quinn is not letting Travis Worland get away. He's not letting him go by. It's kind of crazy to see how close this is, considering that we're like 20 minutes and 30 minutes into this race at this point.
Down into turn one for the first time, we don't see Quinn go side by side. That blinking car behind them in the orange and blue is still Cy Andre in the 811. It's making it hard for him to try and race close to anybody else, but his pace has been good at the very least.
Hey, another battle that's starting to heat up because I think he's getting tired of riding behind him. Driscoll, I think, is starting to go on the hunt here against Bennett. It looked like it the last time they were on the oval, getting broken up a little bit now by the DP of Eric Smith, and they also got another DP right behind them, and Alessandra Daldone, that they'll have to try to resume this battle after they clear, but that'll be another one to keep an eye on here over the next few minutes.
But Alessandro just got hit. That was Driscoll who got into him. Don't see much damage on the car. He may have gotten away with it. The stewards aren't going to like it, but his race continues at the very least.
Now, Alessandro's got major left rear damage, Joe. That's going to be significant to his aerodynamics. That's going to be a big problem for him trying to make it back out there.
That did cost Driscoll about 2 seconds up to Brian Bennett. This is exactly what Bennett wanted, though, Adam. He's finally got the gap to try and get away.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll say this about that incident, just kind of eyeballing it there, it seemed like Alessandro braked a lot earlier than what a lot of the other DPs did right there. And I don't know if they just got enough time to react to that. So it might have been what happened there.
Things are finally calming down just a little bit, even though we are getting a bit of contact between drivers out there as we watch Driscoll continue. I can tell you that Sam Harris and Jeff Schmeier had a little bit of side-by-side, but that went out in favor of Harris taking 8th in the GTEs. Schmeier settles back in his Ferrari. Take a glance back at the top three, the podium for the GTEs, who are now 5.2 seconds ahead of Brian Strodbeck.
Yeah, still riding there contently.
Yeah, these guys have not broken up at all, but Matthew Thunhorse seems to be content riding behind Christian Challoner, and this is definitely a fuel-saving measure. Thunhorse could be pushing Challoner harder, as we see Mark Torres pull up to the back of both of them quite easily. So that just shows me that Thunhorse definitely doing some fuel-saving right now. Same as Lionel Kalisto. We talked about Kalisto before, but he's all the way back to 11th position now in the GTE class, and we know how strong he is. We know that he could race up here with these three guys, but he's doing some fuel-saving and doing some alternate strategy himself, so expect to see him somewhere up near the front by the end of this race.
And you might notice there on screen that the two cars flanking Thunhorst are both kinetic racers. Thunhorst, even though he's not racing for Alliance officially, is still riding the Alliance colors. And these are two teams that are essentially have one of the biggest rivalries in recent seasons here in the majors. Even though it's not bad blood, I can tell you that they certainly are both watching that Alliance car between them and not going to give him any favors.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing there. Just watching the leaders here of the DPs just slicing and dicing through traffic right now is just incredible. And they've got their work cut out for them here because they're only getting into the back of the GTEs now. They got a long way to go before they get up to Thunhorse, Challoner, and all that. So they're having a tough time.
Yeah, very tough time as they cut through the field, and they're doing a great job, though. Travis Worling not losing too much time. He's losing a little bit of grip, though, coming off the corner. But Travis and Liam are doing a great job cutting through here and maintaining their composure. It's not easy to do cutting through a pack this thick.
Yeah, and it's just been incredible having to deal with this traffic now that they've all really gotten mixed up out on the circuit. You can see that Quinn's not going to have an opportunity on Worling, at least this time, down into the bus stop chicane. Ooh, but Travis looks awful hot into there.
Yeah, he's very, very loose. Liam Quinn's got a good run. This might be the best opportunity he's had all race, but he's going to have to do it around the outside, which is not going to allow him to speed enough to get by the time they get to turn one. He goes out there, and look, he has to duck back down inside because Travis pulls away. So Liam Quinn unable to get by.
And we've had a change for second in the GTEs. Torres managed to get by Thunhorst. Checking to see where this happened. Looked like, wow, he mugged him down into turn 1.
That was he got him pretty well. As soon as Thunhorse went high to try to set up corner entry, Torres just suddenly pounced and got that position. So that's going to put Kinetic running now 1-2 there with the GTEs.
That'll make them very, very happy. We've got some takers for the DPs coming into the pits as well. I see Intilli down pit lane. We've already mentioned that Corbin has pitted along with Partridge and Daly. Justin Kirby, I don't know when, but he has been in and out of the pits in that DP class.
Joe, I'd like to give an update on the GT3 leader. This is Brian Bennett. He's now definitely into the thick of it with those GTE back markers, as you can see behind him. And behind Brian Bennett in second position for the GT3s is Steve Driscoll, but Steve is getting no respect from these GTE back markers, and they don't have to give him any. They're battling each other for overall position on track, but Steve is getting really held up by these guys when they come down into turn 1 because of the strength of the Mercedes on the straights.
Right on board with Driscoll. Just behind him, actually only 0.3 of a second back, is Wade Hayes. Hayes probably happy to have Driscoll closer to him, since that gives him someone to draft off of, potentially maybe save a bit of fuel. He hasn't been making an attack on the unorthodox driver quite yet. Temperature has been steadily going down out here at Daytona. It's now 79 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface. Still getting a little bit of wind as well, and that could be messing with fewer and more aerodynamically sensitive cars. I think we had a GT3 off track. Nick Kuhn in the number 19 is trundling through the grass in the just outside the bus stop, I see. Looks like he's now back on. Certainly way off pace. Didn't hit anything, but he lost a lot of positions. That sends him down to 10th.
And Thunhorse now, going back to the GTEs, Thunhorse is still all over the back of Mark Torres. I figure that Thunhorse had him pounce on him. Now Thunhorse wants to try to return the favor and maybe try to get back to second position. Because, see, this is no longer just riding. They're going after it here.
Yeah, Thunhorse and Torres seem to be really going after it one after another. They're doing their level best to get to mess each other up a little bit. I've seen a little bit of argy-bargy, a little bit of moving lines during braking to try and keep each other behind each other before Torres was past Thunhorse. So these two seem to be like they're getting a little bit of a spat here early on in this race.
And what this is doing is allowing Christian Challenger to start to pull a gap down to Torres. I wonder if the 05 is playing rear guard for his teammate potentially. They've caught up a little bit now that they just finished the oval portion. They keep fighting, though. That'll keep Thunhorst well away from Challenger and could make it a much easier victory for Christian.
Yeah, guys, I can report that Bill Daly in his DP has spun in the infield. We don't have to go to it. He's struggling a little bit on grip, but there he is going, exiting through onto the tri-oval again, onto the oval again, and he's really started to struggle with that DP. He had his incident early on. It looks like it hasn't really recovered the traction since then.
Sad to see him have a bad day that he is. We've only had one DNF so far, and it's the mystery of Anthony Pisano. He did come and slow down to the entry of pit lane, and he stopped there and then eventually took a tow, but we didn't see him hit anything. Didn't seem like he had any damage on his car. I suspect there was probably something real world related that pulled him away.
Yeah, because his car, he ended up having just kind of an adventure going through the bus stop, was off on the bus stop, and then just rode the apron the rest of the way around and then stopped the car. So I have to think the reason for that adventure was something physical there, whether it be hardware failure or something like that. But that's bad because I always like to see Anthony Pisano do well.
Thunhorse has got to run this time on Torres. He's around the outside. As they stay close together, he's really punching him down through the tri-oval here as they now break, and I think there's a little bit of contact between them. They're stayed wheel to wheel. Eventually, Torres pulls away and keeps that second place.
Yeah, and they're going to have the leaders of the of the DPs getting ready to come through them as well, with Warling and Quinn probably catching him here this lap, if not the next.
Torres managed to get inside of him down through the International Horseshoe. Torres finally pulls out of the way as Thunhorst gets back up into second place. This could be a critical moment for him. Let's see if Warling and Quinn disrupt this battle and split them apart. Or maybe this could allow Torres to have another chance to get back by.
Yeah, but Joe, this has allowed Christian Challoner to pull away to the likes of 2 seconds. That's broken the draft to Torres and Thunhorst. So that means that these two now would have to work together to catch back up to Challoner. Challoner now has free reign of that gap ahead, but here comes Warling behind the two.
Warling's going to have an easy pass, but I don't think that Quinn will. Quinn might get caught up, or he could make a very late dive in here. He's going to slow it up early. Quinn stays behind. That loses him a little bit of time up to Travis Warling, but at least he can pass them on the oval portion.
Yeah, but he has to pass them on the high side, and that's the least favorable way to pass him. He's losing time to Warling up ahead, who has the draft to Challoner, so he's losing significant amounts of time now. This is the biggest we've seen this DP gap get since the beginning of this race.
Yeah, Quinn was a little bit too far back to try to dive on there going into the bus stop. But, Warling really sliding there right in front of Challoner. Everybody's able to get away from it, but that's going to be another opportunity for Liam Quinn to get slowed up just a little bit, as now he has to follow Challoner going through the horseshoe.
And curiously, Adam, that was Warling in an unorthodox car and Christian in a Kinetic Racing. I mentioned that nobody really gives any quarter if you're from that other team. I have a feeling he thought that there's no way he's going to let him hold him up through there. Challoner lets his own teammate in the sister class go by. Liam Quinn continuing to try and chase down for that DP lead. Looking through the field, we've lost our battle for the lead in the GT3s. We've still got a little bit of one here that we've been following here with Challoner being chased by Thunhorst.
And that gap between Thunhorst and Challoner, and during all of that, really kind of closed back up. I mean, he's back within drafting distance now.
Well back within, Adam. This is a very interesting moment because I feel like Challoner might have backed off a little bit because Thunhorst is right on the back of him and might have an opportunity for a pass going into turn 1 if he so desires. He hasn't before, but that doesn't mean that he won't this time.
Oh, and our leader's pitting in the DPs. Travis Warling is in. Eric Smith is going to follow him. Is anybody else going to take that? Looks like Dick Mueller. So we might be towards the end of the stint here for our DPs.
Yeah, of course, those DPs will have a little bit of a shorter stint than what your GTEs and GT3s will. So this is getting pretty close to scheduled time for them also. But still, it's exciting to see them first time on pit road, see who can gain a little bit of time, who can't. Because the pit exit here, it's a little bit on the tricky side. You can stand to lose or gain a lot of time.
And Joe, Eric Smith just missed his pit box. These DPs can take tires and fuel at the same time, but Eric Smith missed his pit box, so he's going to lose a couple seconds on pit road this time as Travis Warling gets back out on track.
I think we had our first driver hit the pit wall the pit exit wall. Daniel Knight, as he was following Travis Warling out of pit lane, got very, very close. I'm not sure if he actually hit it, but he certainly had to check the car up.
Daniel, that's not the first way I want to talk to you about tonight here, buddy. That's one of our riding shotgun guys out there still running the he's going to try to run a little bit here this year. It's a little while ago. He ended up catching a car that was spinning. I think it was Chris Long, and I think he was coming in to get some of the damage fixed from that. But yeah, I just looked at it, and I went in there a little hot.
I'm watching our now new leader to see if he's coming in, and indeed, Quinn is pitting.
Yep, so Liam Quinn pitting from the lead. Cy Andra is going to go on by and take another lap, which is actually quite impressive for a DP pit strategy. So let's see whether Liam hits his box. We know that a couple of guys have had problems, like Eric Smith, so let's see whether he can hit his box cleanly and get back out on time.
Let's keep these cameras on Liam Quinn to see how his pit stop goes, but I'm watching Travis Warling while we watch Quinn take tires. Warling is currently in NASCAR 3 and 4. You see as he comes onto the tri-oval portion now. Is Quinn able to get going? It was a 23.9 second stop for Warling. Quinn up to 24, just slightly slower. He was behind before, and now he's going to be even farther behind as he exits the pits.
Yeah, but Adam, does this mean that he's going to be able to take less fuel on the final stop? Because we know that they have to do a little bit of a splash and dash if they don't save fuel during these runs. So does that mean he's going to be able to take a little bit less fuel and maybe save some time on track that way?
I hope so, because that obviously will make it a little bit more interesting at the end. But yeah, that's an entirely plausible scenario. Take a little bit more now, take a little bit less later. Which, by the way, also brings up an interesting deal with the GT3s. There's a lot of guys out there that are saying we're going to triple stint tires, not take tires at all this entire race. And then there's some teams out there that are going to take tires the first stop and then not any of the remaining stops. So tire strategy could be big in the GT3 tonight, and that's something we haven't really talked about that much yet.
Yeah, and the GTEs are the same way. I heard from a couple of different drivers from the other splits, the other regions, that said the same thing, that they weren't going to take tires all day either. And for those asking in the chat what times the GTEs are running, their fastest laps were around laps 3 and 4, where they were running 41.6s, and now the fastest drivers are running in the 42 3s and 4s, so they haven't dropped pace much at all since the start of this race.
Michael Morley, the 6th place DP, is slow on track.
In fact, he stopped on the backstretch and he takes a tow.
Same thing. He just gets off the gas coming off the banking between NASCAR 1 and 2, and
he's out of fuel.
Yeah, eventually stops.
I think he ran it too long. Everybody else had pitted.
And Reed Miller missed his box when he came into the pits. He's in from what is now 6th place, as we see, I believe that is another DP of Dick Mueller pulling away. But Reed Miller, that's another couple of seconds lost on pit lane for him. That's Marcus Tracy, rather, leaving the pits.
Don't need to go to it, but Cy Andre has jumped Liam Quinn in the pit stops. So it's gone from bad to worst for Liam. Not only has he lost time on Warling, but he's now behind another car.
Yeah, and one that's been blinking a lot here tonight with some sort of connection issue. So that's got to be distracting for Liam Quinn. You have to be careful not to make a mistake in that type of situation.
Meanwhile, we're heading down to the GTEs once again. This is Harrison Malbrun fighting for 6th position. Go ahead.
Malbrun seems to be struggling with a little bit too loose of a car under braking. It's possible his brake bias is not in the right position. It's also possible that his set isn't feeling very good right now. But Samuel Harris, on the other hand, seems to be pretty comfortable in his Ferrari. And so he's right in the back, right in the draft of Malbrun. And is he going to go to the outside to look? No, he's not. He's going to give him bump draft.
Oh, no!
And wreck him!
Malbrun turned around. He gets it going. But that was a hard hit for that BMW.
I don't believe that was intentional. I think Harris just intended to give him a bump draft, but man, that's an unfortunate event.
That wasn't even in the tri-oval.
It was just on the transition to it, Joe, and I think that's where the two cars were just not quite lined up right, and that's where they caused the incident.
I think if Malbrun winds up in the same split with Harris when we do the Daytona 500, he is going to avoid him like the plague for bump drafting. That was just unfortunately sloppy. We're already nearly an hour into this race, this 2 hour and 24-minute race, round 1 in the majors. Right now, your leaders are Travis Warling in the DPs, Christian Challoner in the GTEs, and Brian Bennett in the GT3s. We've only had pit stops completed in the DP class. We're still waiting for a majority of our GT cars to come in. Before they start kicking off those pit stops, we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with more racing here, the latter half, if you will, of the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. An hour and a half left to go here in the Daytona 2.4 to open things up for the majors. Travis Warling is your overall leader in the DP class. Christian Challoner leads the GTEs, and Brian Bennett leads the GT3s. It has been some of the most aggressive racing we've seen here, especially at the opening round of the 2.4 hours. And it's certainly not been without action.
Oh, Bennett's around. Bennett having contact with Kirby. He's trying to get Kirby was trying to get around him in his DP, and a little bit of contact sends Bennett around.
He's pulled such a gap over Driscoll, though. He hasn't lost the lead. And
Driscoll's going to be right there back in his draft, though.
Yep, you're right. There we can see just behind him that bright purple and teal car with the pink rims. That's Steve Driscoll. Now about, 6/10 of a second behind Bennett.
Bennett's going to get held up a little bit by this DP ahead of him. That's going to allow Driscoll to get right up to the back bumper. This is the first opportunity Driscoll's had since he got held up by traffic. So Brian Bennett is now probably sweating a little bit, knowing that Driscoll probably is hungry for the lead.
But when are we going to start seeing pit stops for these drivers as well? These GT3s probably can go the longest of any of the three classes.
And I don't believe Driscoll's going to go for the pass here, but Andrew Waring has spun around in the GTEs in the infield a little bit. And we only have another DP off in turn one.
Yep, that was Morley we saw on screen go off all on his own. Starting to see a lot of drivers struggle. You guys were talking during the break about Challenger even having some problems.
Yeah, Challenger struggling a little bit with the back of his car. We're gonna stay here though and just keep an eye on this GT3 battle. But yeah, Christian Challenger in the GTE class was struggling a little bit with his rear tires and slipping around a little bit. So it's very difficult driving out there. I think the track might be going through a little bit of a transition.
As we watch them come off onto the oval, that is Eric and Tilly splitting them in the DP. He's going to be able to go up to the high side and get around. Now we're checking out Christian Challenger, who still has Thunhorse close behind. Torres has since fallen off of them. Let's give a watch here as we ride on board Challenger, just see how the car is behaving.
The car not behaving too well. I do want to report that we are starting to see some pit stops in the GTEs. Our first taker is Brian Strodbeck. He's come into the pits from the 4th position and is now in the pit lane. But look at that. Christian, it looks like he's got the car back under him, but he was slipping around quite a bit earlier on. Let's see how he does on the exit here.
Coming back up onto the banking. That is Jose Malbron behind them. That's one of our GTE cars that is a lap down, so that's not for position. So far, so good for the Porsche. As we ride on board, you can see in the rear view screen, that is the Yellow Alliance Ferrari of Matthew Thunhorse in the 98, staying right with him. Nice and smooth for both drivers down through the bus stop chicane. Let's see if either of them now decide to come in. If I was Torres, I almost say that Torres needs to maybe try and pit early, see if he can get a little bit of an alternate strategy to disrupt things. Oh, and he must be listening to me. Here he comes. Here we go. Well, as our leader's also in.
Yeah, not much of an alternate strategy. I think this is the primary strategy for most of these GTs. I'd expect to see everybody come in, including Matt Sentel, Vincent Leherbier, Samuel Harris, Thomas Buckley. And so it'll be interesting to see whether or not anyone does an alternate strategy here and can keep going for another lap.
Sentel, a former black stripe driver on the oval side of things here on iRacing from long, long ago. Clearly very good. He's been sim racing since the days of Grand Prix Legends, to tell you the sort of experience he has here on the PC.
Oh yeah, and Joe, I called it. Vincent Leherbier is able to go one more lap through. So Leherbier up from 5th position up to 1st now, just by nature of cycling through one more pit stop. He might have been saving all that time on fuel. So it'll be interesting to see as who comes out in the lead once we cycle all the pit stops through.
About 2 minutes away from a 1 hour into this race. Of course, he won't be able to go all the way until the end at that point. We'll
and Brian Bennett's in from 2nd place in the GT3s.
Oh, wait, was he passed by Driscoll? Because Driscoll was in 2nd place before, I believe.
My guess.
No, Driscoll was still back there. He had not been passed yet. I think this is a strategy move.
I think so, yes. But this is an interesting one because I think these GT3s, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but they can go 1 to 2 laps longer than the GTEs on fuel.
They should be able to. Unless there's been some sort of change that I didn't see in the release notes in the last build or so. But they should be able to go just a touch longer than GTEs.
I wonder if this is Bennett trying to break the draft away from Driscoll.
Very well could be. That's what I mean. I think it might be a strategy play. And Bennett's smart like that. Bennett's got got pit strategy down to a nail. Like he knows exactly what he's doing when he does it. So that is probably very much a strategy move.
It could be, but at the same time, I saw a lot of other GT3s in there with him, so it's possible that Driscoll was just able to save a lot of fuel being in those packs behind the GTEs that were slower than him and just save more fuel that way and could go an extra lap longer. Here comes Brian Bennett out of the pit.
Also, Vincent Leherbier has hit his pit stall and is relinquishing the lead back to Christian Challenger. Curiously, Challenger much quicker than Thunhorst in his pit stall, though.
Oh, wow. Significantly quicker.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
Um,
development. I wonder
yeah.
whether or not Thunhorst took more fuel than Challenger.
That or tires.
There it is on screen. There's a whole, let's see, 8-second difference between them, I'm seeing? 7-second difference.
It wasn't tires. Thunhorst did not take
Yeah.
tires, so I believe it's a fuel difference then for that. That's interesting, Adam. Would that come back to bite Christian towards the end of this race?
Good. It could come back to bite him, or it could be genius. It's either gonna be one or the other. But sometimes in these races, you have to do something different than the guy you're closest to, because if you both do the same thing, maybe you're gonna have a problem later or something. So maybe he's just gambling now to see if it'll pay off. And I think the worst that it will pay off is maybe he ends up getting second instead of first. I mean. And you got to remember, this is a long season. Yeah, you want the race win, but you're thinking about those points too. And if you can gamble and only lose one spot in the gamble, I might gamble that too, just to see what happens.
We're watching Brian Bennett on screen. Will he retake the lead from Driscoll? Because Steve's just finished his stop, and he's coming out of pit lane now. Bennett was pretty similar on pit time. Actually, he was a little bit slower by about 4 seconds, I'm seeing. So Driscoll, as he exits pit lane, Bennett is only coming around turn 1. So our new leader is the number 51 in this GT3 class.
Yeah, by a really good margin too.
That was a great call from Steve Driscoll. He decided not to put in the fuel that he saved from that last, or maybe he didn't have to put in as much fuel as Brian Bennett from that last run. Remember that Driscoll got caught up behind those two slower GTEs for quite a while until Brian Bennett had that moment. And so now Driscoll out up front with an advantage after that pit strategy.
Interesting stuff. And the last of our GT3s are in now. That gives us a chance to run through the top 5 in each of our classes. So let's give you a quick update of how this race has been going. Starting with the DPs, Travis Worling is your leader right now. He started on pole, and he has just been put under immense pressure all race long. But it wasn't from the second place driver, Cy Andra, who's been having connection problems for much of this race. Cy seems to have gotten it somewhat sorted out, as he's looking like he's calmed on my screen, and now he starts to go away. So there it goes. Let's go to Liam Quinn in third. The number 24 is right now riding in third. He was the one that was right behind Travis Worling, tried to get in front of him, tried everything possible, but just could not peel it away. He's being chased by Eric Smith. Briefly, Eric Smith was in the hunt for the lead in the early few laps when they had 6 or 7 cars all close together. But he's since fallen back. He's about 9.5 seconds behind Quinn right now in that 4th position. Same thing with Dick Mueller. He was up to the podium at 1 point, but he's now fallen back down to 5th, where his pace seems to have dictated things. The number 84 has been mostly running on his lonesome. What's the GTEs like?
Yeah, GTEs right now, Christian Challenger, we're just talking about the difference in pit strategy possibly here with him driving that Porsche. But he's led a pretty good chunk of the GTE race here so far today. We'll see how well he can do, but difference in pit strategy now between him and Matthew Thunhorst, who is running in second. They've spent the last majority of, I don't know, probably the last 15 laps or so, running nose to tail, but now got a pretty good time gap between the two. So that's going to be interesting to see how things play out. What that's done is thrown Matthew Thunhorst back in toward the clutches of Mark Torres. Not quite there yet, but he's closer. Mark Torres running in third. Those 3 drivers, Challenger, Thunhorst, and Torres, has been pretty much those 3 in the GTEs since the start of this race. Go back just a little bit, though. You can find Brian Strodbeck. Brian Strodbeck, he was bleeding positions at the start of this race, but now he's kind of stabilized out a little bit. In fact, Strodbeck has been able to kind of get a few back as he's now running in 4th in your GTEs. And then behind him, somebody I don't think we've talked about at all here today. Very quiet race from Matt Sandell as he runs 5th in your GTEs.
GT3.
GT3 class being led by Steve Driscoll right now up at the front of them. Driscoll wasn't leading from most of the way. In fact, I believe we've lost our leader at the start, Lyndon Swaby. I think Swaby is still running, but he's well down. We'll talk about him a little later. Driscoll has picked up the pieces, but only after the pit stops, where he had about a 4-second quicker stop to jump him ahead of second place Brian Bennett, who rides in just about 4 seconds behind appropriately because of that time lost. Brian pitted a little earlier than we expected. We're not sure about that strategy call. Regardless, one we haven't talked about, Jimbo Pfeiffer's worked his way up into the top 3 here, and that is actually a recent development. He was much farther down than this before. It's the car that was behind him that was in third for much of the race. Wade Hayes, who is running in P4 right now, the number 33, has been relatively quiet. He got close to Driscoll for a moment, but then once Driscoll had the pit stop, that was it, and those two have been separated by a big margin. Top 5 in the GT3s completed by Nick Kuhn. I've seen actually Nick Kuhn off at one point in the bus stop, so he could have been much farther up this field at this point if it wasn't for that. He had a very short pit stop. Wonder if he didn't take tires to try and save on that one. What a topsy-turvy race we've been having.
Yeah, it's amazing, though, for the most part, how much things have calmed down here really about the last 5 minutes or so, maybe the last 10, compared to what they were at the start of this race. It was crazy. It was crazy good. It was a lot of close battles out there. Not too much, and even still, not a lot of very serious accidents. We've had a few hard contacts, but not as much as we've seen in previous years. Race so far has been fantastic.
Yeah, and also it's been really, really clean too. I've been surprised at just how clean these drivers have been. We've seen a lot of interesting moments throughout the years in the Majors Series, and some tempers flare, but tonight has been very clean, very respectful. Looks like everyone's giving each other enough space. There might be a little ruffled feathers here or there, but everyone seems to be understanding the rules of the road and really showing each other respect around Daytona today.
And we've had a problem with Dick Mueller. I think that was the commentator's curse here. He got into it with Andrew Waring, one of our drivers in the GTE, and that actually caught up as well. I think Ryan Bueller.
Oh, yeah, he ended up back end. Looks like it ended up breaking, ended up locking up on him, and he tried to correct, and that sent him into Waring, and that in turn got Ryan Bueller involved.
And Bueller just barely avoided any damage from that. He was able to lock it down, but take a look at this. Dick going into the inside just gets a little bit loose, and Bueller just barely misses it up.
Wow. Incredible stuff. And that last car that you see coming through, that was Bruce Jones just kind of coming across the scraps of things, wondering probably what just happened. There's Bueller. Wow. I don't know how he did not touch another car. Everybody gets it going once more. So just a small little melee.
Yeah, but Joe, if we can go back to that battle there between Brian Bennett and Jimbo Pfeiffer, if that's okay, if Sean's able to do that for us. I know with Jimbo, I noticed he's running pink wheels, and I think you were talking earlier that there's a story behind that.
There is indeed. His wife is on recovery from breast cancer, actually. So in commemoration, now that she's fully through recovery, or at least if not fully through recovery, she's, from what I was told, 100% better now, from what he phrased it to me. He's running those pink rims basically to advertise breast cancer awareness all season long. So you're going to be seeing these a lot in every single car that he hops in. Tell you what, though, Jimbo Pfeiffer, I'm curious to know what he's done to be able to get up into this, because I don't believe we've really seen him be a factor all that much. And his pit stop was a 102, so it wasn't crazy different. It's just a sort of quick stop. And now he's been challenging Brian Bennett. He has caught up to the back of that number 71 and has given him something to think about.
Yeah, that's just, and of course he also pitted really early on too, the Jimbo Pfeiffer. He pitted back on lap 26, where Bennett, he pitted only on lap 33, and of course this is their lap 33 and 26. So it could be the difference in pit strategy between the two of them right now as well.
Interesting to note about these two drivers, though, they are teammates. This is that new team. It's essentially an offshoot of Alliance that Brian Bennett and Jimbo Pfeiffer racing for Sector 5. We weren't sure what kind of splash that they were going to make, but judging by their performance here in GT3, it's not looking too shabby.
Yeah, and Joe, it definitely, and Adam, I think you called it exactly right. It was Jimbo Pfeiffer's pit strategy that was enabled him to get in this position. He actually came out of the pits right, Christian Challenger actually came out of the pits right in front of him, and then Brian Bennett came out of the pits right in front of Jimbo Pfeiffer, and so Jimbo was able to draft off of Christian for a little bit in order to get to the back of Brian Bennett, so that's what's allowed this all to happen.
Great strategy there from Jimbo Pfeiffer to ride on board with the Mercedes, looking up at the lone Audi out here on track in the GT3s. No, I take that back. I see one more.
There's one more.
Caleb Lavender, our only other driver in the 158. He's running in 14th right now. Not quite running at the heights that Bennett is. Got some action happening for 5th in the DPs, and actually it's going to be a change for position right now.
Yes, this is Alexandra Deladone and Ryan Bueller who are battling side by side. And actually, Alessandro getting a little bit loose there, and Ryan just staying off the back of him. But Ryan Bueller, we saw him almost get into that incident that happened just a couple of laps ago coming out of the infield. But Alessandro just getting by on the backstretch. Alessandro's been running a pretty clean race aside from that one spin we saw in the bus stop. But Ryan Bueller probably still sweating a little bit after that incident and just letting Alessandro get on by.
Yeah, I think Alessandro was just making sure that Bueller was awake in class. But right now, the 156 down to 6th position for him. I think we had a change for 10th as well in the DPs. Is Scott Corbin? Oh, no, that was just Kirby pitting. The number 43.
Kirby actually hit the wall exiting pit lane, so he's got a little bit of right side damage now.
Man, it amazes me that that wall has stayed in at this track as long as it has, because it is dangerous, and it's certainly caused some embarrassment over the years for drivers.
Yeah, in real life and in sim racing.
Yeah, but the alternative's not much better, having the cars dive back out on track in turn 1. Oh my goodness, this is very close. Justin Kirby almost into the back of Jimbo Pfeiffer, and Jimbo going deep into the corner coming out of the infield. That allows Justin Kirby to get by, but that also allows Brian Bennett to escape.
Yeah, that broke the draft big time between those two. Pfeiffer's not going to be happy about that one.
I think the alternative there, Adam, is just take out the wall, but you still leave the lane. Like, you still have to use that lane as a pit exit lane, which isn't that uncommon. But at least, when we're not talking about pit exits and all that, you don't have that extra barrier there to worry about. At least that's my 2 cents. I'll step off my soapbox now. I'm
kind of with Lindy, though, because if a car slides wide and he gets out onto the racing line out there, that's kind of bad news. So I think now I'm kind of changing my position. I think I'd rather have the wall.
Why would you do that, Joe?
Meanwhile, we're watching Pfeiffer try to run Bennett back down with the rude interruption they had from poor Kirby there. Down to an hour and 10 minutes left to go, and Thomas Buckley is off course in the bus stop chicane. This is a Porsche in the GTE class, and I think he smacked the wall in this one.
Yeah, he got into it. It looked like the rear end just kind of locked up on him and braking to the bus stop, and not able to get it slowed down before he ended up nosing it into the tires. He hit him pretty soft, though. I don't see a lot of damage on that car.
Wow. And take a look at this battle on screen right here. This is really interesting. This is actually all cars of different classes except for Aaron Corey and Nick Kuhn. And this is very fascinating to see Cy Andra just snake by through Adam Pollock. Lionel Callisto's able to get through. That leaves Adam Corey out ahead of Nick Kuhn in the background. So that all That's just the glory of multi-class racing, seeing all these cars of different types, different speeds try and navigate through the same bit of track and make it through clean.
Aaron Corey's another sleeper today. I don't think we've really talked much about him at all, but he's running in a top 5 within his class. This has got to be one of the newcomers to this series, because I don't recall seeing the number 85 running before.
He's been doing a good job just being nice and consistent throughout the day, staying out of trouble, and it's working out for him. He's actually looking like he's got pretty good lines, pretty good speed, so it's awesome to see him up here in the pro class and really staying strong.
Fans of Thomas Buckley, he did have to come into the pits. I believe he took his spare car and is outgoing once more. I'm not sure. Based on what we've seen so far, I don't think this 127 can make it to the end.
Jimbo Pfeiffer's in the wall in turn 1. He just got a little bit too much gas into coming out of the corner, trying to stay ahead of a GTE, and that's significant front-end damage for Jimbo.
Oh, man, he was running such a good race up to this point. Don't think he managed to have any contact from Torres there, who was our third-place GTE that was just behind him.
Yeah, it was the back end started to come around on him and just was not able to get it straightened out. By the time, you realize you got to do something else, it's already too late. It just kind of carries him into that inside wall. And that was hard contact. And you see how the car just kind of jumped off the ground right there.
Very heavy contact. He actually had another little bit just right now from Liam. Actually, that was Liam Quinn that got into the back of him. Now, it was very, very small contact. But if Quinn's got any damage on his car, that could hurt his straight line speed.
Well, it definitely held up Liam Quinn significantly. Let's go take a look at this replay. Liam Quinn had nowhere to go. He had Nick Kuhn and Jimbo Pfeiffer right one next to another and just had nowhere to go. And you'll see it right here as they exit here really close.
Yeah, I don't think he expected Jimbo to stay to the inside line. He was hoping to accelerate beyond him. Quinn
And
eventually
Joe,
gets through.
Joe, that puts Liam Quinn almost 12 seconds behind Cy Andra, who's in second place in class. So this DP class is really starting to spread out now.
It really is. Meanwhile, we've got more pit stops with the number 36, Adam Halleck, down pit lane, looking for more service. This is a significant start to this season for Travis Worling, our race leader. Because remember, he missed out on the championship last season. Travis is kicking things off with aplomb.
Yeah, he is. It's very strong start for him. Travis doing what we've seen him be able to do. He's definitely had the capability for it. He just has to hang on to it. Remember, we got more than an hour left in this race still, so he's still got a long way to go before he brings it in. We don't want to give him the commentator's curse quite yet, but Travis Worling putting on a strong showing today.
Back to our leader in the GTEs. Christian Challoner leading our current overall champion in the Drivers' Championship from last year. Matthew Thunhorst, there's, about 9 seconds between them right now. The 37 currently putting on quite a show here. Granted, again, some of this was gained by a 7-second quicker stop that we had for the Porsche leading the way right now. So could he have to pay that back once we get to their second pit stop?
Oh, that's why if you're just now joining, or if you've been with us since the beginning, you don't want to turn away, because this is when endurance racing, particularly the format that we're running here with just the 2.4 hours, single drivers, that it gets really interesting, because now you got different pit strategies. Now it's what will happen, as opposed to just watching things play out in your screen. You're gonna have to wait, another 15, 20 minutes, maybe even another hour before you actually see how that strategy is going to pay off.
There's our leader down in the GT3s, Steve Driscoll. He's left Brian Bennett quite a ways behind himself. It's about 5 seconds to the second place car here in the slowest class. They're being joined here by that Cy Andra getting close behind them. Cy actually had a little bit of a wobble there. Back behind Brian Bennett as we watch Driscoll continue onto the oval He's got Michael Morley, who's had his own adventures and just getting by a lot of our drivers in the GTE class. Morley still has to pass Challenger to get back with his own class. Watching from Morley's perspective, it's a bit of a Dory Award, I think, here for the 06. Staying with it, you know, there's still points to be gained, especially if other drivers find themselves wrecking out.
Yeah, I'm talking to a couple of the organizers of the major series. That's exactly why they've implemented some of the rule changes they have for this year. They have the spare car, which is one reason, but they've also upped the race participation requirement up to 75%, so that way they're trying to encourage drivers to, in order to score, you have to finish 75% of the completed laps of the leader. And so the goal there is to try and get people to keep racing, even if you spin out, even if you're not in the position you want to be. It's good practice for everybody.
It looks like he's going to let our leader by. That's Warling, putting him, let's see, another lap down. Yeah, that puts him 2 laps down here from Travis. So that's why you saw him slow. That is Travis on your screen in the purple and teal machine. Looking down through, this is about the most calm we've seen it, knock on wood, all race long. Still
I think
waiting
I think the only thing that looks like it might be starting to get ready to heat up here, Joe, is going to be Thunhorst and Torres. It looks like they're starting to get close together once again.
Now let's go to that, but also an update. Alessandro Pitts in the 061. This is one of our drivers, I think, taking the his I'm trying to remember how they phrased it. You'll have to help me here, Adam. When they jump over to a different region, but he's
His
running
guest
from
drive.
Italy.
Guest drive.
Guest drive. That's it. Yes, thank you. He's taking his guest drive today as the Italian.
And another change from last year is that your guest drive will count towards the points of your team, if you have one, in the region that you're in. So that means that he can't earn points for his drive here in this region towards the region that he's going to race in for the rest of the season. But this is still good practice, and if this is the only time you can race, you got to make time for it.
Absolutely. So right on board now with Thunhorst, looking back at Torres. This is for second place in the GTEs. Torres was briefly ahead of Thunhorst earlier on in this race. They had an alliance sandwich going on, and then Thunhorst got overtaken, eventually worked his way right back past Mark. Mark regaining that ground on that yellow and black machine. He's got it to within half a second. He's got to get a little bit closer if he wants to make an overtake.
Yeah, that last lap there for Torres was looks like about 9/10 of a second faster, almost a full second faster than what Torres had. Oh, excuse me, what Thunhorst had.
I just wanted to report an interesting strategy call. This is Chris Long, who just came into the pits out of the 4th position in GTE, so he's now pulling back out. He's going to be down in 15th in the GTEs now, but he just came out of the pits. And yeah, so he's trying out a different strategy.
Shortest stints are of the DPs. The longest for these GT3s, Chris Long, appropriately, getting back out. The Carolina driver returning right into the thick of traffic. Bueller returns in 10th in the DP class. We've got a few drivers that have already taken their second stop there, but everyone within the top 6 right now of that fastest car has yet to come in.
And just amazed how things have broken up. But I've seen these before, Joe, in these endurance races like this, where you go through this quiet stretch, especially after the exciting first hour that we had. It's going to be quiet here for the second hour, and then this thing's going to explode again, I think, at the end of this race. We're not done yet.
Calm before the storm, I guess, right?
Well, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's definitely the way that I've seen these races go, especially in the major series. You may think that all these strategies are different and weird and someone's doing it wrong, but really, it's possible that everyone's doing it right, and we're probably just going to see a nice battle at the end of this race.
Let's take a look at Challoner once more up at the front in the 37. His teammate Mark Torres is now within 0.3 of a second. He's chopped that down yet again. They're dealing with the leader of the GT3s. Driscoll stays up high. Let them go underneath. We hop on board the Ferrari of Torres. Should be able to get fully past this leader here.
Well, he's taking a little bit of a compromised line into the bus stop. That's going to allow Thunhorse to get away if he takes it cleanly, and he does. So that allows Thunhorse to get a little bit of a gap. But Torres is still within about 0.6. So that's going to allow Torres to still draw the draft. But he's not going to really have an opportunity to pass before. He probably won't get to him by the time they get to turn 1.
Yep, as they work their way towards that heavy braking, fastest part of the track here in the tri-ovals. They're going to have 3 wide. That's multiple different laps happening there for the DPs of Antilli and Quinn. And they handle it beautifully. Well, Antilli maybe not so much as he falls back once again going wide through turn 1.
Actually, really going to slow up Torres in the process right there.
This is going to prevent him from turning into the corner, so this is going to slow him up even more. And they've got Steve Driscoll still behind trying to go fast, so yeah, this has put Thunhorst out over a second. This is going to break the draft to Thunhorst if Torres isn't careful.
Well, he caught him once. I wouldn't put it past him to be able to do it again. Mark's certainly looking, he's looked to be pretty calm here in this second stint, trying to catch back up to his rival. In front of them, looks like they're going to have a little bit of lap traffic from the GT3s. Bruce Jones is just ahead.
Bruce Jones is going to give a nice draft to Thunhorse as he climbs up there. So is Eric and Tilly. So Thunhorse is actually in a decent position as long as he backs off just a little bit to avoid the aero wash through the bus stop. Looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. So now he's going to follow them through and then get a nice draft off of both of those cars going down the front stretch.
Going down to 6th place in the DPs. Oh, and they've jumped around for me, actually, here. It looks like for 7th place, actually. This is Alessandro in the 061 being chased by Kirby. There's about a second between them right now. And they're dealing with traffic themselves.
Yeah, both these guys have had kind of an adventure. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but Matthew Thunderhorse just got a little bit of... just gave a little bit of the bumper to Bruce Jones. Bruce Jones actually braked out, coming across the start-finish line. That was a very interesting moment. I wonder whether we can grab a replay of that, because this is very unusual.
Yeah, I think Bruce was trying to maybe get himself out of the way. Watching from onboard Thunhorst. Hopefully the picture will come back here. But yeah, it looks like he was trying to give him the spot, and that was just when Thunhorst went back down in line behind him. So sort of a comedy of errors.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I think that was just, Bruce just trying to be nice, but it did give Thunhorse a little bit of front end damage. Now we know that these Ferraris are not super susceptible to that, but hopefully it doesn't affect his top line speed too much.
Probably not happy regardless. Torres still about 1.5 back, so he isn't able to try and do something with it. We've got one of our GTEs in early, I think. Jeff Schmeier.
Yeah,
Jeff Schmeier. I guess this would be his final stop.
Jeff Schmeier is the only driver this week to take the playoff provisional rule change. And so he's come into the pits and he's taking his pit stop. Adam, you got the report on that?
Warling is in, Syandra is in.
Must be at the end of the stint. Liam Quinn is not in. He stays out.
Now, these DPs, though, we talked about it earlier. This shouldn't be the final time we see these guys down pit road. We are thinking they're going to have to take a splash at the end.
Which might put Liam Quinn... Yeah, might put Liam Quinn actually in an advantage if he could take less fuel in the final run. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. This is one of those strategy calls we're going to have to wait a little bit to find out how it works. But Liam Quinn, even though he crossed the line in 3rd, he might be closer to these guys than we think by the end of this race.
I almost wonder if Liam is going to try and stretch it so that he only needs that one more stop. Worling is back out in second. Clean stop for him. Cy Andra was in a little bit longer. Mueller now pits from 5th place.
One disadvantage you have of not taking that final stop for fuel is you don't get, I mean, these guys aren't going to take tires with that last stop because the tires are probably going to take longer than they need to take for the fuel. So it's going to be really sketchy to see whether or not Liam can make it. I would guess that he probably won't be able to unless he can go another lap or even probably 2 more laps before he still need to save fuel on this 3rd stint.
He's on lap 26 right now. That's pretty far in. And you can see him ducking up and around Caleb Lavender, the only other Audi that we've got. This will tell us the answer to many questions. He's pitting. He can't make it any farther.
It's still going to save him a good 1.5 to 2 seconds on his next pit stop, but that might not matter if he's not got the pace to keep up with these guys, because 1.5 to 2 seconds isn't going to save you if you're 5 to 10 seconds behind.
Well, this will sort out our order pretty soon. He's the last of the front runners to take that 2nd stop. You see, as we expected, taking tires. We wait for those jacks to go down and him to get back out. Worling's already by.
Yeah, this is a big gap to try and make up. He's going to have to do it on pace and on pit strategy. So Liam Quinn's got a lot to prove here. He's going to be, wow, quite a bit behind, almost 20 seconds behind Travis Worling by the time he comes out of the pit.
Had a similar pit stop time to Worling, but a shorter one than Cy Andra. He will return in 3rd place. Eric Smith, who's been riding in 4th, poor guy, hasn't got quite as much attention from us, is still not out of this as well. A little bit of bad traffic and honestly, even just a mistake from Liam Quinn could allow Eric Smith to get onto the podium here. Watch the race continue on here into the dark. We're already at it's like 9 p.m. virtual standard time, 10 p.m. actually virtual standard time. We're just about to hit that hour mark.
Yeah, Joe, you were talking about a little while ago whether Torres caught Thunhorst one time. Could he catch him again? And we thought the answer was yes, and he's back in his draft.
Down to 0.8 of a second. Remember, it was up to 1.5 seconds before. So he has made some inroads. That's Thomas Buckley between them. He is in the same class, but he's laps down. So this is not for position. They want him to get out of the way quickly.
That's been the story of this this fight for Torres to get back to Thunhorst. Just bad timing on catching some of this lap traffic. And once again, he had to follow Buckley through turn 1. Thankfully, Buckley gave him room there going through the horseshoe, but now heading toward the 2nd horseshoe here, Torres already starting to latch back on.
Yeah, and with Torres and Buckley, even with Buckley going through that first horseshoe, it really makes a difference falling behind the car in front of you. You change your braking because you don't want to get into the back of the guy ahead of you. So Torres spinning the tires a little bit, coming back onto the oval. That's going to allow Thunhorst to pull away a little bit. Torres still within the draft, if just barely, but Thunhorst has Daniel Knight ahead of him to try and get a draft off of him soon.
And this is all taking place nearly 12 seconds behind our leader in this class, Christian Challoner. Ever since the beginning where they were very close to him, once he broke that draft, Christian has made mincemeat of the rest of the field.
Yeah, Christian's last lap was a 1:42.45. So he's running some pretty consistent and pretty quick lap times. This lap was a 1:42.51, so losing a little bit of pace, but still very consistent, very strong out front, whereas Matthew Thunhorst's last lap was a 42.6, so about 1/10 of a difference.
Is Daniel Knight going to interrupt Mark Torres here? He compromises his entry line down into the first corner. Torres once again just gets the bat into the stick at every turn. So Knight is now behind him, but he's got it down to 7/10. I'm amazed that he's actually gaining as much as he is.
Yeah, I don't think Daniel interrupted his line all that much, because he actually still gained on Thunhorse there going through one. Torres is right there now. I think one slip up from Thunhorse, he's going to be there.
Might not even take that much, because Torres, if he can outbrake Thunhorst, if he could get a better shot through that bus stop, he's going to be right on the back of Thunhorst as they come back into one. And so that's exactly what Mark Torres is going to be thinking now. You've got to be careful, though, because trying to do the bus stop quickly can pose a risk. We've seen quite a few drivers go off there today.
That certainly has been the danger zone in terms of wrecks that we've seen. Continue to ride on board now with Torres. Going to gain that time. It was 7/10 going in. Let's see what it is as they come out of there back onto the oval. It's 6/10 now. He did gain. 5 has really got a nice machine through the twisty bits.
But once again, you've got the DP of Travis Warling now, probably going to get at least Torres here by the time they get to one. Is he going to get Thunhorst as well? He will. Okay, so he's not going to interrupt it all that much. But Torres, ooh, he's under the rear wing now, Thunhorst.
Is there. So, does he go on the attack? Does he see if he can maybe get this spot away from Thunhorst? They come down into the International Horseshoe. Let's see if they're going to get any more drivers coming through. I'm not seeing any DPs for a while. So this is going to be a straight fight.
You know, Joe, if I was Torres, I would not pass Thunhorst, and I would do some fuel saving here, because this, yeah, we're going. I mean, this is a good opportunity to save a little bit of fuel, because you want him to pass him with the right opportunity to get by. We know that these GTEs can get good fuel, can get good speed, but we want to make sure that Thunhorst is not going to be able to pass him back on the straight, and that's easier said than done, even though Torres has good pace.
You know, the other thought could be maybe he could pit now, get that last stop out of the way, get away from him, because he's clearly quicker from what we've seen. Just essentially leapfrog him.
But if he pits now, he has to take more fuel, so that might not work unless he's been saving fuel behind the guys up to this point. But we know he's been going quick to try and catch up to the back of Thunhorst, and he's still going all out. He's definitely catching up to the back of Thunhorst right now, so it's going to be interesting.
He stays with it. Haven't seen a pass attempt yet, but we haven't really seen him get close enough to go on the attack into a corner. Stays right behind him in the tire tracks as they break for turn one. They're going to put a lap down on Caleb Lavender up in front of them. Should probably catch him coming out of the infield here.
And I could be mistaking on this, Joe, but I'm fairly certain, just listening to the engine notes, that Torres wasn't quite running full throttle there behind Thunhorst. So I wonder if Adam hit the nail on the head there with the possibility, maybe a little fuel saving now on the part of Torres, just taking advantage of it while he's back there.
I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Torres is that wily as he comes back on. We're going to ride on board. Let's listen in as well. Slide around Lavender, who I mentioned before. Let's hope that Lavender actually breaks here, though, because this could get in the middle of them, and he is indeed going to get in the middle of them.
And just make sure people know that we are keeping an eye on all the other cars out on track. This is really the closest battle on the racetrack right now. The only other one that we might have to watch over the next few minutes that I'm keeping an eye on here is Kevin Hill and Brian Barnes, and that's going to be for fifth in the GT3s. But right now, your battle there between Thunhorst and Torres is the battle on the racetrack.
Yes, indeed, as we see them come down into turn one more time. Torres does get by Lavender and continues to try and chase Thunhorst back down. He was within about 0.3 of a second before. Well, that's gone back up to about 0.6 just from that one little bit of traffic.
Yeah, and Joe, I want to give you guys an update on the lead in the GT3 class. Steve Driscoll still ahead of Brian Bennett, but by 4 seconds. And this is an interesting development because that gap has closed a little bit quite recently. It seems like Brian Bennett is gaining a little bit of pace here later on in this run, and that'll be interesting going into the final laps and the final 44 minutes of this race. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Brian Bennett can catch up to the back of Steve Driscoll by the time we get to the end of this race.
And I was just looking at that there, Adam, and there, Jay, Sean's on the ball, getting that lap comparison up. I was going to say, it's been by just a little bit at a time, a few tenths here and a few tenths there. It hasn't been by huge leaps and bounds either. So that's going to be a long play, looking at Bennett playing that long play.
Torres has caught up a lot to Thunhorst this time around, and I wonder if that was due to the DP and Jimbo Pfeiffer in the GT3 that just went by them. Oh, and Christian Challenger pitted ahead of them.
Yeah, Christian Challenger's in the pits. Mark Torres is saving fuel. Man, it's all starting to crack off here with the strategy.
There you see our leader in the class, or who was our leader, as Thunhorst now inherits it. Challenger taking his stop. I believe, do the GTE cars have to take fuel and tires separately?
Yes, they do.
Yep. I'm just waiting to see if those jacks come up on Challenger's car.
It'll happen after the fuel.
Watching to see ourselves.
No tires for Christian Challenger.
Yeah, that seems to be what the winners of the other regions did in GTE. So Christian Challenger obviously paying attention there. And so he's taking no tires. He's going to go out there and try and do something here. He's only about 15 seconds. Well, he's only about 25 seconds behind Mark Torres and Matthew Thunhorst. So he's definitely got that pit stop in the bag. But Torres has been saving a lot of fuel, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not his pit stop is shorter than these two.
At the very least, I mean, it might save him enough to just be able to leapfrog Thunhorst, even if it's by even only a couple of tenths of a second, and just change the position on the racetrack between those two.
A driver who was in 5th in the GTEs pitted. It was Matt Sintel, who returns in 7th. So he's got his final stop of the race done. It can go all the way to the checkered flag. Continuing to watch Matthew Thunhorst on our screen, our leader in the GTEs. Does he come in this time? Is he going to try and take it around one more lap? He's going to stay out, and he's going to drag Torres with him.
Yeah, Mark is definitely saving fuel. Mark Torres had a run coming onto the front stretch into the dogleg, but gave it up to let off the throttle a little bit and save a little bit more fuel. It's possible Mark Torres would either go another lap or short fuel on this next stop.
To come out of the International Horseshoe, Mark is certainly trying to be a thinker's driver today. Looking a little more Prost-like out there. How about some credit to Brian Strodbeck, who gets bumped up to 3rd with the recent pit stops. We won't hold on to that. We're wondering about what was going on with him at the start. Even though he's not looking like he's in for the victory, the 171 has been holding steady.
Yeah, he really has. Just very clean and consistent ever since the start of the race. Like, once things started breaking up, he started able to shine just a little bit. And he's on his way to a good finish here today.
Got a few more takers in the DP class. Scott Corbin and Ryan Bueller also taking scheduled stops. That should take them to the end of things. Watching Strodbeck as now we jump on board Ryan Bueller, showing, boy, the onboards really show how narrow that pit exit is too.
Yeah, it's super narrow. It's really difficult to navigate. And then you have this crazy little switchback right at the end of it that is flanked on either side by really high anti-cut curbing, and those can tear up the bottom of your race car if you're not careful. Many a Daytona 24 has been lost running over those curves.
I can tell you from experience that if you hit them, you seriously damage the car. So you do not want to flirt with trying to cut the corner there, as we now get back to the battle for what is currently the lead in the GTEs. I say battle loosely in air quotes.
Yeah, I think Mark Torres is measuring Thunhorst. He's really just saving time, saving fuel, saving his car, just riding behind Thunhorst. I wonder whether Thunhorst is doing a little bit of the same, because their pace has fallen off a little bit in the last couple laps. They're in the 42.7s. Granted, it's only 2/10 off of what they normally are running, but these two guys are running a little bit easier than they have been the rest of this race, and it might be for fuel reasons.
For those wondering where Challoner went, he's currently in fourth.
Oh, big accident at the bus stop right now. Cy Andre is in it. Who is in the tires? That is Richard McClure.
Oof. This number 81 McClure racing in the GTEs.
It looks like I'm not sure if there was contact, but Cy Andre's front end is all tore up now.
There is contact, and it wasn't Andre's fault. Chris Long also hit a little bit of it, just basically a chain reaction.
Yeah, it was Richard McClure's back end broke loose, and Sandra had no time to react. Got it now on your screen.
Oh.
And just bad luck after a fantastic race.
Man, McClure hit hard into the wall. Naturally, he's brought it into the pit since then. We're going to watch from onboard Cy. Yeah, I don't know how he would have stayed out of that.
And Cy did come down pit road.
He got his spare car, so he still had it left, so he's able to get back out on track, and he's going to resume racing in fourth position, about 11 seconds ahead of Alessandro.
That was his splash and dash on fuel as well, so he's good to go to the finish now.
And speaking of things that might try to develop here toward the end of this thing, I've been looking, and I want to say over the last few laps that maybe it's just optical illusion here, but I wanted to say Bennett was starting to catch Driscoll just a little bit at a time, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case looking at the lap times.
Yeah, they're still at about 4.5 seconds apart. They've been stuck at this distance for quite a bit now.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of the way things were looking there. It almost had me fooled.
However, Driscoll has been riding behind Jose Malbron, who's in a different class. So I wonder if he's pulling a little bit of a slipstream there.
Or he might be pulling a little bit of fuel saving. And it's possible that Brian Bennett's... Yeah, it's also possible that Brian Bennett is doing the same thing, just keeping the delta between himself and Driscoll even. And if he does that, maybe he thinks that he has enough fuel in the bank that he can cut the time off to stop and get right up behind Driscoll. But he doesn't know that Driscoll's doing the draft behind Malbrand. So it's possible that both of these guys have different strategies. Here comes Driscoll into the pits.
All right, that's our leader in the GT3s. We mentioned a shorter stop for him last time, so what's this one going to hold?
And Bennett goes by, so Brian Bennett staying out on track. This is a development. This is their last stops, so whatever comes out of this is how they're going to finish the race.
Driscoll still stationary. Wade Hayes is going to go on by. He's not going to pit. That moves him down to third. Aaron Corey also stays out. Make that fourth place for the 51 as he finally gets going. And it was a 23-second stop for the 51.
And I don't know if we could grab this, but it'd be great to get a lap comparison between Christian Challoner in fourth in the GTEs and Matthew Thunhorst in first in the GTEs, because these two... It's going to be interesting because Christian Challoner just came out of the pits with new fuel, and Matthew Thunhorst and Mark Torres have been racing one another in the pack. And I think it's going to be interesting. This would be the tail of the tape to see whether or not Challoner, he's not quite gaining enough, I don't think. This is going to be interesting to see whether or not Thunhorst and Torres can come out any closer to Challoner by the end of this.
Still, he's gaining. You can see there on screen, he's been
Torres is
quicker
in.
and pits before Thunhorst.
Interesting.
Huh.
Still, even if he was saving fuel, that'll be that much less he has to take here anyway. I didn't necessarily think they wouldn't pit together, but we'll still see. We could still see the dividends here of that fuel saving.
For reference, Challenger's stop was 26.4. We're watching Mark Torres count up. If he gets a very short one, then yes, indeed, he was doing a lot of fuel saving. Up to 20 seconds now. Still taking on that fuel. 23, so 3 seconds shorter than his teammate.
But at the same time, Christian Challenger, as we just saw, went by. So Mark Torres is going to come out alongside Vincent Laherbier, another teammate of his. He's going to come out actually a little bit behind him, so he might be able to use him as a draft to get up back to the back of Challenger. Challenger's only about 9 seconds up the road.
Laherbier has yet to take his second stop, too, so he has no reason to fight his teammate. They'll probably be in communication and be aware that he doesn't want to hold up Mark Torres. So that leaves us with Matthew Thunhorst in that front group needing to take his stop. Let's see, he's on lap 30, it appears, in the number 98. See him flashing his lights there at the lap traffic. That's Chris Long. Horst is able to pit now if he wants, but he does not want to. He's going to keep going.
And now I'm interested to see whether or not Brian Bennett, the leader in the GT3s, is going to pit this time around. It's been another 2 laps since Steve Driscoll pitted. So there goes Alessandro ahead of him. Let's see whether or not Brian Bennett takes this opportunity to pit, or if he thinks he can go longer. He's not dropping into the pits. He's going to keep going. Interesting strategy plays now.
All right, Brian Bennett, who's really been the main one to fight with Steve Driscoll much of this race. The only other driver that's been close to them is Lyndon Swaby, who, by the way, for fans of Lyndon Swaby, he did get back out after he took his spare car. He's running 13th in class, 13th and 14th. Stradbeck pits for the GTE cars. That's going to allow Torres to cycle back through. Down to a half an hour left to go in a 2 hour and 24-minute race to open up the season.
Take a look at this Travis Worling with a little bit of company on his back. This is Ryan Bueller, who's in the 9th position and is just playing a little bit of a drafting game. We know Travis has good pace, but Ryan Bueller being a little bit more consistent after that spin that we saw earlier on in the race, but he's just following Travis through all this traffic.
I'm a bit surprised that Liam Quinn is as far back as he is on Travis Worling. It's about 25 seconds between first and second place here in the DPs. You're looking at the leader as he puts another lap there. It was a bit sketchy there for Marcus Tracy.
Yeah, it's just kind of the way the cards have fallen for Liam Quinn in this race. I mean, it's just been, catching people at a wrong time here, and then maybe a little bit later, and just gradually has fallen off as the race has gone on.
And again, for those who are new to the majors, we ride on board with Quinn right now. We've briefly touched on it, but haven't really fully explained that they are mimicking the major races throughout the world and just about any discipline that you can find here on iRacing. So this obviously is for endurance sports cars here in North America, mimicking IMSA. And then the next round in February, they're hopping on the oval here at Daytona, and they're going to be racing in Gen 6 stock cars. So
yeah, and that's one obviously I'm going to be trying to make. So I'll be making the return there next week, or here in a few weeks, to the Daytona 500. And then also, by the way, one I'm really excited for, Joe, is coming up at the beginning of March when we're running the K&N cars at Rockingham. Is kind of one of our 2 throwback races this year. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. Granted, Rockingham is incredibly bumpy, so you talk about a race of attrition. I anticipate we'll see a little bit of mess there as the race goes on. Still watching the kinetic driver of Quinn, who's just coming into the infield portion. Travis Warling's already leaving it. Oh, and Thunhorse Pits, our leader in the GTEs, is in.
This will be the tail of the tape to see whether or not Christian Challoner has been able to make up enough ground to get past Thunhorse, and then we'll have to see whether or not Thunhorse has enough pace to catch Challoner if Challoner goes by. So Brian Bennett in the GT3 class has gone by as well, so very interesting. We're going to see what happens here with Thunhorse. Thunhorse coming out 20-second stop.
Wow. Very short stop compared to Challoner, but Challoner's got the pace, and he is already by. Thunhorst back out of pit lane. He's got the limiter off, and he is going. Torres is well behind him.
Challoner 3.5 seconds up ahead on the road from Thunhorse, and Thunhorse has no drafting help to get up there, whereas Christian Challoner's got quite a bit of traffic ahead of him. So here we go. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not he can get up there.
Torres is still behind his teammate LaHerbier, who are waiting to take his final stop. Samuel Harris as well in GTEs is coming down pit lane. So things have cycled back around up at the top of the GTEs. We got a better picture of how things look with Challoner leading by just about 3 seconds over Matthew Thunhorst. And then it's another 5 seconds back between Thunhorst and Torres. Challoner is certainly going to have a little bit of a fight on his hands.
Yeah, especially because Matthew Thunhorst just gained about 1/4 of a second on him just in that little section of that last lap alone. So Challoner not out of the woods yet. Thunhorst, we know how fast he is on tracks like this. So Thunhorst closing in. It's going to be fascinating. Let's see whether Christian can hang on to it.
And you know what's wild is because Challoner has switched regions, we have the weird situation where we've got two current champions fighting for the class victory here.
Oh, and I can report Brian Bennett is in the pits, the GT3 leader. He's pitted about 5 laps after Steve Driscoll. Let's see whether this makes enough of a difference. He's coming out of the pits now. That's a 23-second stop. Steve Driscoll's stop was also 23 seconds, but I think Driscoll's had more pace on track because I think he might be about to go by. Here he goes.
He is indeed. Hasn't even reached the cones. Bennett gets overtaken. Driscoll is already down through turn 1 as Bennett finally gets the limiter off and gets going. He's going to actually come out behind Matt Sentel, who's his teammate, but in a different class. So shouldn't hold him up. Let's see what the gap is now that things even out. It's looking at about 3.5 seconds between Driscoll and Bennett.
And I can report.
This is small margins here for a 2.5 hour race. 3 seconds is not much. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's impressive to see how fast these drivers are going. It reminds us of the professional series and the 24-hour series that they do. Travis Warling, though, has really had the measure on Liam Quinn. He's up another 2.5 seconds since we last talked about it. And Liam Quinn falling back ever farther. I just don't think he quite has the pace today, Joe.
Yeah, this is a bit surprising too, because Liam Quinn is so good in these high downforce cars. We mentioned his skills in the Indy cars. It translates well here to the prototypes. But as quick as he was at the start, something just seems to have gone away from the car.
Yeah, not necessarily sure what it is. It also might just be his luck with traffic. That's definitely something that plays into these races before, as we see whenever we commentate the Camel Series, Joe. Sometimes you can't predict what traffic's going to do, and it can play a major part in how your race shapes up.
That's true. Still, I'd be shocked if that was all traffic that cost him nearly half a minute. And Eric Smith, by the way. Oh, wait, no, Eric does need to take his final stop. I was going to say he's running in third, but of course we saw Cy Andra have to take his spare car and take his final stop. There you see Smith right now. He's got about 13 seconds over Cy Andra, which is not going to be enough for him to stay ahead after he comes in to take fuel. Got most of our action out of the way in the first half hour of this race, and since then it has been a thinker's game out here.
Now, there's an interesting battle going on in P11 for the DP class. Ray Partridge and Eric Antilli have been kind of swapping back and forth over the last couple laps throughout the infield. It's interesting to see because both of these cars seem to not be handling very well at all. They're both locking up a little bit under braking, and they're both having trouble with traffic. Like we have Ray Partridge held up behind Brian McGreevy in the GT3 car ahead of him. And so these two drivers not having any luck, but they're having a good battle between one another right now.
Come on to the oval. It's going to be a lot easier to get around McGreevy from here. We've also got one more DP in the pit lane. Dick Mueller takes his final stop. I believe Mueller was riding somewhere around 5th place or so, I want to say, before he came in.
That's right, yes. Dick Mueller was riding in 5th, and he has just come out of the pits. A 17-second stop that's quite a bit shorter than some of the other drivers we've seen. Cy Andra only had a 16-second stop, so it's going to be interesting to see whether Cy can make it to the end of the race on the amount of fuel that he took.
Yeah, Andra is still running in that 4th spot that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Interestingly, we only have 6 cars on the lead lap right now. That is a little bit screwy because we have differing pit strategies here in the DPs. Get a better picture of that once everybody takes their 3rd and final stop.
Kevin Hill is in from the 4th place provisionally in the GT3s. He's going to cycle back to his natural position at this point. But yeah, a lot of drivers still with their pit stops left to go.
Let's check in on our leaders in the GT3s because we were wondering about Driscoll and Bennett. It was about, 3.3 seconds when they finished their stops. It's now up to 3.7. It's a small gain for Driscoll to run away. Not huge, not a huge amount. Still, I don't think Bennett's going to want to lose too much more. He's going to have to start reeling him in.
Yeah, Bennett needs to get some luck with the traffic. He's got some cars ahead of him, but most of them are DPs. They were the battles that we were talking about. That is Liam Quinn. Eric Smith is not too far behind Liam Quinn at this stage of the game, so that's an interesting battle to watch. I can also report that Matthew Thunhorse does not fall behind Christian Challenger too much. He's still holding about 3.5 seconds.
Thought for a second I saw that Quinn was going to pit, but he does not. You're right, Eric Smith holding it about 4 seconds behind Liam Quinn, which I'm pretty sure is closer than he was before. 32 has certainly been on a tear, which makes me wonder where Cy Andra is going to wind up because Quinn should fall behind him. I guess he was ahead of Quinn before he came in from his issues.
Joe, I'm seeing a little bit of left front damage on Liam Quinn's car, and oftentimes here at Daytona, that is a telltale sign of hitting those curbs exiting pit road. And if he did that, then it's possible he's a little bit down on straight line speed. I'll do a speed measurement coming up on this next time they go up onto the banking right now. But it's possible Liam Quinn's pace has been falling away because he has a little bit of damage.
Good catch there. As we watch him get faster and faster, he's up to 160 already here on the banking. That would certainly seem to make a lot more sense to me as to why he's dropped away. As we watch this, Reed Miller also takes a stop.
Doesn't look like he's down on too much speed. Only 1 mile-an-hour difference between him and Eric Smith. But it could have affected his aerodynamics as well, which makes it more difficult to take corners. These DPs are very sensitive to damage, and while that damage can be repaired, it does take a while, and also it doesn't prompt the repair very quickly. So it's possible that Liam just hit that coming out of his last pit stop and just hasn't been able to gain the time back.
Kinetic Racing driver who looked like he could potentially challenge Travis Warling is well too far behind to try and do so here at the end. And looking through, at this point, it's almost a waiting game even for us. We're looking to see who is coming into pit when and then what their pit stops are like. Then we'll get our full picture. Adam talked about it a little bit earlier, that you got to be patient to really get the reward when you watch endurance racing. This is much more of a chess game.
Oh, that is Bill Daly, who you saw off track there. He's in the 15th place in the DP class, and this is Reed Miller catching up to the back of Liam Quinn. As you can see behind there, and look at that. Yes, that's Bill Daly, who is having trouble in the infield.
Yeah, he just had a small off. Don't need a replay there. He outbraked himself heading into the Western Horseshoe, and Eric Smith is going to go around his high side. Right now we're watching Quinn in the number 24. And now we switch over to Smith there, giving chase on him, down to 3.2 seconds now. Oh, did something happen to Brian Bennett? Brian Bennett is riding in 4th. Let me check his laps real quick.
Brian Bennett took a pit stop. He got damaged, actually. He had to take a spare car.
Just trying to find. I know Jeff Schmeier just had problems there going through turn 1. A lot of people had to split him and get around him, but I didn't see Bennett involved in that.
No, this was quite a few laps ago, Rack. Brian Bennett lost it coming out of turn 2, actually, through the little S's and into the horseshoe, and just lost it on his own and ended up hitting the outside wall, at which point then he had to come in and get a little bit of a pit stop for that spare car. So Brian Bennett in a really compromised position at this point.
Oh, he smacked it hard. That is another case where it's just a real shame for what has been a spectacular race for the number 71, looking at least a second place. But this is great news for Wade Hayes, another Kinetic driver who has snuck through everything. Just really didn't show a whole lot of flair, but the 33 is going to look at second place now.
Which is crazy, considering the fact that he's 31 seconds behind Steve Driscoll. And that's another thing that you get a lot during endurance races. Sometimes these gaps can get pretty big by the end of the race, and that just has to do with different paces, different fuel strategies, different interactions in traffic. So fascinating stuff.
Also had an off for William Fletcher. We don't need to go to the replay of this. He spun it out of the bus stop, didn't hit anything, and kept it going. He's down in 15th. We got a number of drivers, I think, that might be here in the pro split, just looking for the pride of seeing the checkered flag here in this race.
Yeah, that's one thing, too. You're talking about how well Kinetic's doing here today, and, you know, just they're going to come away from today with a big points day.
They really are. Now, let's see. We saw, what, about 26 laps for our DPs. Warling's on lap 23, so he can go a little bit longer if he wants to. Lap 22 for Liam Quinn. Yeah, I don't think Quinn's going to be able to get all the way to the finish without taking a stop. I kind of wondered with him trying to stretch it longer.
That would be the only hope he has of trying to make the win, is if he could try and make it all the way to the end on fuel. But he would have had to be thinking of that since his last pit stop. And I'm not sure, the pace differential's not quite big enough for that to be the case. So I don't know if he's going to be able to, I highly doubt he'd be able to make that win.
Yeah, I don't think so either. 4 more laps in 15 minutes, and they're doing about a minute 37. That just doesn't seem likely. UK&I driver up pretty late, obviously. Not the only one. Christian Challoner also hails from across the pond. That car behind Quinn is Reed Miller. That's a lap down car. He's riding in 9th. However, Miller has finished his final stop.
And I can report that Matthew Thunhorse has fallen back to about 5.3 seconds on the back of Christian Challoner for that GTE lead. So this is starting to fall away a little bit from Thunhorst, unfortunately, and he's not able to catch up to the back. Mark Torres has gained a little bit of time on Thunhorst ever since the pit stop, up to 7.3 seconds, but still, those are big gaps considering we only got 15 minutes left in this race.
Hey, how about a battle on position on racetrack? Ray Farlow just got around Jimbo Pfeiffer in the GT3 classes for ninth in class.
Yep, and it looks like that one happened down into the first turn.
And already being broken up by the DPs. It lasted for a few seconds at least.
We might get some action, though, because Eric Smith, well, for a while it was down under 2 seconds. He's actually continued to gain on Liam Quinn. The 32 could have a shot at second place here. Third place, I guess it should be once they pit and fall behind Cy Andra.
It was very gentlemanly of Justin Kirby to let Eric Smith go through. We'll see whether Reed Miller does the same. But yeah, I mean, Liam's got a couple lap cars between himself and Liam Quinn, but he's got those cars as draft as well. So Eric Smith could get up to the back of Liam if Liam really is struggling that much. I mean, Joe, it just seems like this is not Liam's race. Here comes Eric Smith into the pits, though.
That's it. He's going to take his stop and be able to go all the way to the finish from here. By the way, Travis Warling, we might be able to see him in this time as well. He's on lap 25 of his stint now. Smith smoothly into his stall. No dramas there. Andra will go by easily. There is our leader overall on screen, Travis Warling, working lap 79 now.
All right, guys, we're into 13 minutes to go left in this race, and in both of the other regions, this is when stuff started to crack off. This is when people started to make more mistakes, when people started to push a little bit harder, and we saw a little bit more action in the other regions. So it's possible that we're going to get a little bit of instability from this race, starting from about now until the end of the race.
Well, speak of the devil, Dick Mueller just had a solo spin in the Western Horseshoe.
Oh, Travis Warling is in as well from the lead of the DPs. You were right, Jeff.
All right, so takes his final stop. Pretty sure Cy Andra was well too far back to really challenge, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. If he does stay with it, that'll be miraculous considering the incident that he had.
And just for reference, Liam Quinn, at the point where Travis came into the pits, he was just coming out of the bus stop, and he's now coming into the pits, so he was not saving fuel. That was all raw pace. That was Travis Warling's lead.
And also a few minutes ago, too, we had Senthal and Farlow get into it. Farlow lost it. You can't really find that, but it's, yeah, I think you're right there, Adam, that things are starting to get a little bit more interesting. I can tell you from driving these, you really are kind of tired by this point. I mean, and your concentration's starting to drop off.
Quinn has dropped off the jacks, and Eric Smith is coming up behind him. But how close is it going to be? Quinn's out of the pit lane and starting to pick up speed. Smith just coming around turn one. I'd say that he lost time. He was about a second slower, half a second slower than Quinn in his stall.
Yeah, and over-under on that pit stop is about 2 seconds faster for Liam Quinn's entire sequence from in and out laps. So Eric Smith losing about 2 seconds there on track. He's back to 4.5 seconds behind Liam Quinn now.
Certainly got some work to do. Down to 11 minutes to go at this point. That's everybody in our DP field having taken their final stop. There you see the comparison between the two pit stops of Liam Quinn and Eric Smith. This is to settle the last spot on the podium. Let's see, who else are we looking for out here in terms of pit stop strategy? I think that's it, because the GT3s and GTEs have all finished their stops, if I'm not mistaken. Right now, the order is Christian Challoner leading those GTEs. Thunhorst at about 6 seconds behind. Torres, wow. I'd say Torres has fallen off the horse a little bit here. It's about 9 seconds from Thunhorst to the 05. Really just hasn't had anything to challenge the Alliance driver.
Yeah, it's almost at a point where you kind of know that unless something happens, you're not going to gain that spot. So might as well play it safe and bring the car home with a good finish here today.
Yeah, the interesting battle in that class is actually between Matt Santel and Vincent Leherbier. Leherbier's been closing with quite a rate of knots on Santel. Santel has got some significant front end damage on that Ferrari that he's carrying with him. So I think he's going to be easy meat for Leherbier.
Yeah, and that's that from that contact just a little while ago that he had going into the horseshoe. So he's been falling off since, and that's hard to overcome there.
He rocks up behind Matt Santel's Ferrari. Leherbier, with his experience in this series, probably knows how things tend to go, so he's not going to get too risky, but he certainly knows he's got the pace, so he can't sit around forever. In the final 9 minutes, they come onto the oval. What kind of damage does Santel have to his top end? Here they go as they start to pick up speed, 130 miles an hour, 140 miles an hour through NASCAR 1 and 2.
He's not that far off. It's just that Leherbier's just got a good run in all the draft, but he's not going to duck to the inside, not here before the bus stop. He's going to wait till they get to turns 1 and 2. Leherbier takes a very conservative line, gets a good exit off the corner, a good run, and we'll see him probably go for this pass as we get into the dogwood.
So it's going to be for 5th position here. Canadian starts to creep closer along the banking. It's down to 1/10 of a second. Now he pulls out of the draft.
Oh!
He's going to have to go the long-way round, though.
Reed Miller is on his roof. He was getting ready to fight Justin Kirby. Justin Kirby got into him going through, I believe it was the International Horseshoe. And Kirby stopped on track. He's going to take a tow as well. I think he felt bad for that one. I know Kirby. He's a good guy. He definitely didn't mean to do it, but that was hard contact there.
Watching the replay on screen, just as we went to that replay, Santel did manage to get back the spot from Leherbier. Oh, and there he goes, the Dirty Torque driver. Unfortunately, not going to be able to finish this race at the checkers. Wow.
Yeah, Joe, part of me is thinking that that name carries with it the bad luck that we see sometimes from those Dirty Torque drivers in the Camel Series. Reed Miller, not of his own doing, ends up on his lid. What an unfortunate event.
Yeah, that was a battle that I was getting ready to call out because I was getting ready to get exciting, and well, I think it got a little too exciting for those guys.
Well, let's get at least a little bit of screen time for Christian Challoner as we bring him back on, leading the GTE class. That was the battle we were watching before in GTEs for 5th between Leherbier and Santel. Leherbier still stuck behind him. Oh, but Santel just made a mistake in the bus stop chicane. He might get a slowdown penalty here as he was well off course. I think he didn't get one because he's still staying with the pace, but that was sloppy.
Leherbier's got a very interesting decision now. He's going to see, he's got to think whether or not he wants to go around the outside of Santel. Santel's in the middle of the track. Leherbier is going to have to go around the outside, but he's got a lot of a better run. Santel's backing off.
I think he's had enough of that. He sees the writing on the wall. He's going to let Leherbier have it, just try to take this home in 6th position, especially after we just saw him make a very exciting error coming through the bus stop chicane there. Down to 6 minutes to go. As that was happening, don't need a replay, but Bill Daly had an off track at turn 1. The DP driver returns in 13th position, lost a spot to William Fletcher with that mistake.
So barring any mistakes, the leads of each of the classes seem pretty well nailed down at this point. We have Travis Worling ahead of Cy Andra by about 15 seconds. Christian Challoner ahead of Matthew Thunhorst by about 6.5 seconds. And Steve Driscoll is quite a ways ahead of Wade Hayes because of Brian Bennett's spin, and that puts him ahead of Wade by about 30 seconds.
Hey, I spoke too soon. Reed Miller had his spare car left and waiting for him. So once he got the tow, he's back out. He's going to try and recover what he can from this, but he's about 30 seconds back from Adam Halleck. He's riding in 12th. At this point, it's just, as we said, the pride of seeing the checkered flag today.
Talking about, just maybe some concentration falling off. It was a very, very subtle mistake, but I don't usually see it out of Liam Quinn. Just kind of slid just a little bit on the exit of one, trying to get the power back down. No harm, no foul, and I also don't think he really lost a lot of time, but that just goes to show just how much on top of your game you still have to be in the closing minutes of a race like this.
Oh, and speaking of which, there's a car that comes out right in front of him on track. That's Dick Mueller, who he manages to avoid. Liam Quinn nearly saw the whole thing slip away from him there. Let's watch exactly what happened. Thought he had enough space, the number 84 of Dick Mueller, trying to get back on the track. You can see he spun it here in the Western Horseshoe. Ooh. Yeah, that was a bit marginal.
It looks like Liam Quinn's rear tires are about done. I mean, he's got a stint and a half on them at this point, so if he's been using them up, it's going to be very difficult to keep it nice and smooth towards the end of this race. But Liam's got the buffer of 9.5 seconds back to Eric Smith, so he can afford to be a little bit more cautious into the corners right now.
We're going to have 2 to go next time by for Travis Worling. After just about 2.5 hours of racing, I'm sure there's a few out there that are ready for a break. Oh, and William Fletcher's going to have an extra stop, it looks like. I see we got a DP joining us on pit lane.
Yeah, William Fletcher looks like he spun actually coming out of turn 1 last lap, so it's possible that he's got a little bit of damage that he needs to fix, or he needs to take his spare car, or he's just in for his final stop. He's spinning the rear tires on the jacks. Now, in real IMSA, that'd be a penalty, but not here in the virtual world, so he's going to be able to get away. A fairly short stop for him, but fairly standard as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't see any damage on the car as he was wheeling it in there, so I think he just had a bit of a weird strategy compared to everybody else.
Yeah, he had a minor incident earlier on that he had to come through, so I think he was just off cycle more than anything from having to take a spare earlier.
There's our overall leader, the number 90 of Travis Worling, as he gets the 2 laps to go mark here. I'm sure he's ready for some relief. Worling last season wound up within the top 5. In fact, he was second place, 560 points back when all was said and done. The unorthodox driver wants to put one over on Matthew Thunhorst, and today he's going to get more points here in the opening than his rival last season, because Thunhorst is still riding in second with not looking like much of a shot to try and overtake Challoner.
Yeah, and Challoner, the European, pretty much dominated the European region last year, and she's just quite showing tonight. Very, very strong. He's gained a lot of time over Thunhorst ever since their last pit stops, and showing his strength here in that GTE class is continuing to pull away and to race consistent laps. A 42 flat was his last lap, and that's some of the fastest race laps we've seen tonight. So impressive stuff from Challoner.
Here's an interesting mark for you as well. Steve Driscoll finished 6th in the points last season. We didn't get to see him on our points overlay, but the Hoosier also kicking things off with a good run here. Going to get max points today for the first round. Maybe he is shooting for a potential drivers' championship here in the majors. White flag gets ready to be shown to Travis Worling for 1 more lap to go. We're going to be just about an hour shy of midnight here at Daytona. Travis puts another lap down on Sam Harris, running 8th in the GTE class. There's not many drivers around Travis. So we take a look at Christian Challoner as well, receiving that white flag. Driscoll still running through turns NASCAR 1 and 2. So he'll get the white flag in a little bit. He won't get lapped by Warling. He's not nearly close enough, so he's got to go around for a little bit longer than everybody else. Got to give a lot of credit to the number 90. He sounded pretty disappointed last season to miss out on the championship. And we've seen just how stressful it is for drivers to try and win the Drivers' Championship here. It is constant focus for a year. It is incredible practice. It is so much diversity in your skill set that is needed. And Travis Warling was just shy last time. Can he do it this year? He's certainly looking like he's going to try, considering the way that he's run this race, the way that he's left considerably fast drivers behind in the dust. Incredible pace, incredible strategy. The number 90 kicks things off with a win here at Daytona. Travis Warling, the first winner of the decade here in the majors. Then it's going to be Christian Challoner, who comes around and off the banking. The current champion from the European region switches regions to take a win on the opening round here in Florida in the GTE class. Driscoll just getting onto the banking himself. Nice run from Thunhorst. Current champion at least gets a runner-up, so he collects good points today.
Good run from Mark Torres as well. He may not have had the pace to catch up to Thunhorst towards the end of that race, but a strong showing from him coming home in third.
Steve Driscoll down the super stretch and into the bus stop.
And, you know, talking about the unorthodox guys in particular, but in particular, Travis Warling and Steve Driscoll. In my opinion, over the course of the last 3 to 4 years of the majors, these two guys are two of the most improved drivers out there, and they couldn't be nicer people as well. So it's awesome to see them get this win tonight.
Unorthodox with 2 victories here today in this multi-class race. Driscoll wins in the GT3 class at Daytona. What a run from Unorthodox. I think I played them down a little bit too much. I thought that Kinetic would have the measure of them, but it certainly seems that Unorthodox is a mighty force here this season. As we get ready to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel, don't go away because you'll have all the upcoming races here on GSRC. After that, you'll get the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. to Daytona International Speedway. We just watched the first round of the 2020 season for the majors, and Travis Warling was your winner in the DP class. Cy Andra, despite some problems with his connection, well, he held with it. He even had a spin and a wreck at one point with another car. He took his spare car, got back out, and still claimed second place. Liam Quinn just could not keep up with Warling despite showing some pace early on, and still got himself a podium at the least. Eric Smith was close at one point to sniffing that podium, but he settled for fourth. He gained from ninth place on the grid, though, so great job by Eric Smith. Alessandro Del Don with his guest drive over here in the Americas regions gets a top five. And then, of course, Ryan Bueller behind him in sixth. How about this for a climb from 15th on the grid there for the 156. Scott Corbin, he finished seventh despite starting in second place. Bit of a miserable day for the 54. He was the last car on the lead lap with Ray Partridge finishing in eighth spot. Dick Mueller, man, disappointing after he was showing some good speed in the first half an hour. He wound up in ninth with Eric and Tilly behind him rounding out the top 10. Adam Halleck finished 11th. And then you get to 2 laps down with Reed Miller. That mainly happened because, well, he got put on his lid at the end of the race there. 12th place for him. Michael Morley in 13th with Marcus Tracy in P14. William Fletcher finished 15th, and Bill Daly rounds out your DPs in 16th.
Yeah, looking at your GTEs, that win, of course, goes to Christian Schallner. Matthew Thunhorst a little bit behind him. Mark Torres back there. Those three were pretty much the top three and put on a fantastic battle amongst themselves in the first hour of the race. Brian Strodback recovered from a little bit of a rough finish to come home fourth in class. Fifth in class went to Vincent LaHerbier. Matt Santel there as well. Lionel Callisto, my teammate there in Lionheart Retro, he's going to come home a little bit deeper than probably what he was hoping for today, followed by Samuel Harris, Jose Malbron, Andrew Waring, Robert Tarbox Jr., and I'll go ahead and read, so Robert Tarbox Jr., and then we can throw it over to the GT3s with Adam.
Steve Driscoll is going to come home with the win today. Jeff Schmeier in the 12th position overall with in the GTE class, rather, comes home behind him on track, with Wade Hayes taking second in the GT3s and Aaron Corey coming home in third. Then we have Brian Bennett in fourth place in the GTEs, with Thomas Buckley, another GTE, in there nestled in with them in 13th in the GTE class, with Kevin Hill and Brian Barnes coming home in those top 6 positions. And we have Richard Holt and Nick Kuhn, Ray Farlow, Wayne Hutchison, Caleb John Lavender. We have Chris Long, another GTE, followed by Lyndon Swaby in 12th in the GT3s, with Jimbo Pfeiffer, Bruce Jones, and then Justin Kirby, Richard McHugh, Daniel Knight, Brian McGreevy, Ryan Walsh, and Anthony Pisano round out your field. All right, Joe.
We've got our winner ready to talk to us, Travis Warling, getting ready to join us here in the booth. And Travis, I'll be honest, at the end of last season, I could hear some of the disappointment in your voice on missing out on the championship. I'd say you've squared yourself away and you've refocused for this season.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I've been in this series 3 years now, and I've finished a third and a second in championship. So this year it's just championship or bust for me. I've definitely focused very hard on this, and I'm very determined to win this championship.
That shows. That was an impressive gap back to Cy Andre, who we know is fast from our experience here on GSRC. But it's not just you that's been quick. Talk a little bit about the unorthodox team. I have to admit, I did not expect you guys to be one of the ones to be able to challenge Kinetic, but you've taken the fight to them right away.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone at Unorthodox has been just amazing. End of last year and through the off season, we've just been building so much. We've added almost 10 people to the team, and they've all been wonderful and helped us so much. We have definitely meshed a lot more coming into this race, and we've been working very hard. I really need to quickly shout out all of our sponsors because they've helped us a ton. Direct Innovations, Simability, and Cure Limb Girdle Muscular Dystrophy. Those 3 organizations have been amazing, and they've helped us so much in this off season. So yeah, we are definitely coming for Kinetic this year, and I think we can do it, honestly.
I would not doubt it. It's certainly been a marker thrown down in the sand. Congratulations. Sorry for this one being a little bit short. We got a lot of drivers to talk to. Hopefully, we'll get to do that more all season long with you.
All right, yeah, thanks, guys.
Up next, I believe we've got Adam Young talking to our winner in the GTE class.
Yeah, Christian, man, good run today, buddy. I mean, a fantastic battle between yourself, Thunhorst, and Torres there to start the race, and pretty much for the first hour, and then slowly but surely you start pulling away.
Yeah, no, that was pretty fun, and that was a really good race and a really good kind of way to come back to the U.S. region of this series, and had a lot of fun. I kind of made it my thing to try and get to the lead as quickly as I could. I saw that Matt was kind of trying to save a bit of fuel sitting behind Mark, and I thought my best chance at it was to really just kind of get to the lead, and I managed to make that outside pass on him. And from that point onwards, it was kind of a real tactical battle between me and Matt, and just about came out on top. It was really, really close. I think it came out last pit stop 3 seconds in the lead.
Well, of course, one of the things I always talk about whenever we come here to Daytona, and you had the experience with it today, is just how close some of those cars are from the GT3s to the GTEs. Do you encounter any problems today that we didn't see? How was lap traffic out there?
For the most part, it was really, really good. I know I had a little bit of a panic, so to speak, when I saw that Matt was coming out a little bit closer than I expected him to. I thought he was going to come out about 5 seconds behind. He was coming out 3 back, and I saw Jimbo was getting passed into the first horseshoe, and I kind of drove it in there, and I don't think he was really expecting it, so sorry to him about that, but I felt like I needed to go because I thought if Matt was able to stick with my draft, then it was probably going to be game over for me. So for the most part, everybody was really, really good, and I didn't have any problems except for the ones that I created for myself.
Oh, good deal. Hey, Christian, good talk with you here. We're doing things a little quicker today, but anybody you want to thank before we send you out?
Yeah, I'd just like to say a big shout out to you guys for running the broadcast. Definitely going to go back and watch it. It's kind of sad that I'm not able to be part of it like I was last year, but kind of the allure of just coming and racing against these guys was a little bit too much for me. So a bit of a shame on that part, but glad to be back out there racing. And of course, to the guys who kind of helped me do that, the Kinetic guys, they've been really, really good. They helped me out with some race strategy, and yeah, it's been really, really fun. And thank you to everybody involved.
Well, that was your GTE winner tonight, Christian Schallner, making his return to the Americas region, and Adam Lindgren is going to catch up with the GT3 winner, Steve Driscoll.
Yeah, Steve, it was a tough battle out there between you and Brian Bennett for a lot of that race, but then you started to gain more time. Before we get to how you finished the race, were your thoughts when you get that front end damage early on in the race?
Well, I wasn't too happy about it, of course, but maybe I could have been less aggressive there, but it was a key point in the race. But really, it was just kind of stick to it a little bit and see what I can do. It did change my pit strategy a little bit. I ended up taking a longer fuel fill at the start there on the first one, so it would the damage would get taken care of a little bit longer on that first stint. And the idea was to take that quicker repair there in the second stint to kind of surprise Brian there, and I think it kind of worked.
Yeah, definitely. And how was the traffic out there tonight? Because we saw it looked pretty clean, but how was it for you out there tonight?
For the most part, it was fairly clean. I think I had a little bit of frustration with some of the GTEs, but that's just because we're so close on pace where, at the beginning there, we had 2 battles in the GTE and GT3, so that kind of makes it tough for everybody. But for the most part, not too bad. I saw a couple kind of interesting moves, but that's kind of expected in since a varied field like we have tonight.
Well, Steve, we're doing things a little bit quick tonight, but is there anyone you want to thank before we go?
Yeah, I just want to thank our teammates, and I just want to thank our sponsors this year, Direct Innovations, the Simability, and the Cure LG D2i folks. It was a great week of practice, and we look forward to Daytona, the 500.
Well, fantastic winning class, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks as well. That was Steve Driscoll, the winner in the GT3 class. And next up, it looks like we have Cy Andra with Joe Peak.
Yep, our second place finisher in the prototypes. And Cy, first of all, have you gotten the wrench out and started banging away on your modem? Because you certainly look like you had some issues with the connection.
You can thank good old AT&T for that. You can bet I'm going to be on the phone for a long time tomorrow. Not only because, customer service and all that, but try to figure out what the heck's actually going on.
Well, in spite of that, and in spite of an accident that you had late in the race, you somehow managed second place. Talk to us a little bit about the wreck that happened there in the bus stop. It didn't really look like it was of your doing.
No, I think the GTE that was in front just got loose going into the bus stop, and that's pretty easy to do. And he locked down the car as you would, and kind of just stopped right in front of me. I tried to slow down as much as I could, but I got hit both in the front and up the back. Luckily, that was pretty close to the pits, and I still have my free car. So just came right in, took the car, and didn't really lose that much time.
Well, we already know that you're quick here in prototypes from our experience with you, but how do you feel about stock cars? Because next up is the Daytona 500. You're going to come back for round two?
I think a lot of people don't know that I actually cut my teeth in rookie street stocks a long time ago, and I actually have a pretty decent oval eye rating as well. So I think I'll have something to bring to the 500.
All right. Well, we'll look out for you. Anybody you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Thank you to Dallas and Ferris. They were my teammates, and we were trying to do the sweep for 3 rounds, but unfortunately, I came up a little bit short. So thanks to them for helping build the setup, and sorry for not getting first.
Boy, high expectations there from Cy Andra. And up next, I believe we've got Wade Hayes from the GT3 class ready to talk to us.
Yeah, that was a great race there, and from Wade. And Wade, tight battles all throughout the field, especially earlier on. What was your impression there the first hour of the race?
Yeah, the first hour was pretty good for me. Just going to plan. I was sticking there with Steve and Brian for the most part, and then we kind of ran into a battle where there were 2 battles going on with GTE and GT3, and they kind of dropped me there, and then I was stuck. So I just said, all right, keep your head down and keep clean and try to get to the end. I'll have to go back and see what happened to Brian. I hate to get him that way, but I'm real happy with the second place.
Well, second place, definitely nothing to shy at in class here for today, and that's going to be a good points day, and it seems like Kinetic overall had a really good day.
Yeah, really happy with the team result. We're beyond excited with the battle that's coming up with UDOX all year. And actually, we're just talking right at the end of the race there. It should be real close. I think they had 2 firsts and a fifth, and we'll have a first, second, and third. So team battle should be real.
Good deal. Well, hey, Wade, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you at Daytona.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That was Wade Hayes, who finished second in the GT3s. Up next, we got third place in the prototypes as Lindy has caught up with him.
Yeah, Liam, fantastic race today. And it looks like you just came up just a little bit short towards the end, but how was that first stint for you? It looked pretty chaotic for us watching on our screen.
Yeah, it's good to speak to you guys. It was pretty fun. My expectation, I think me and Scott basically was try and hang on to the lead pack, get top 5 at the end, see what happens, because we fully expected Dalidoni and Eric and those guys to really push on from their quality pace. More pace than I thought in the first stint, and I think Cy and Travis were just far too quick, so I don't think that's a coincidence that they just drove off. They've shown in the past how good they are, so it was a hell of a lot of fun, and I'm glad I held on for third.
And so your pit strategy looked fairly standard tonight, but was there any surprises for you that happened during the race that made you change your plans?
Not really. I was near the end there. I mean, Travis on the first stint, he jumped me in the pit stops by a good 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and he was gone. So I think he had an amazing outlap. I'm not sure if he took less fuel or something like that, maybe, but I was waiting for Eric at the end to try and undercut me a bit, and he never did in the end. So it went, as you said, to plan. We had a plan B if we needed it, but no.
And what was your favorite battle on track tonight?
I mean, the Travis one was kind of heavy. But the one of Derek at the end, I think we were just matching lap times for a good hour. So, yeah, it was a good race.
Well, Liam, great finish tonight. Is there anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, all the guys at Kinetic, they're tremendous help. And I think, we're really going for the team championship this year after being beaten by Alliance for the past couple of years. So it's really close, as you can see with Vudox, and I think that's going to go all the way to the end.
Well, fantastic finish, Liam, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Hopefully you speak to me at Daytona.
Yeah, definitely. All right, that was Liam Quinn, our third place finisher in the DP class. Joe, back to you.
Yep, that's going to wrap up our interviews. Got a lot of them in there. Plenty of people wanted to talk to us tonight. So a big thank you goes out not only to Mike Willett and the Majors organizers for bringing us back, but also to the charity that we are supporting here. Again, that is the Limb-Girdle Muscular Dystrophy organization. That is curelgmd2i.com if you want to check them out. Also to iRacing for putting us on the IESN. If you want to subscribe, just click the big red button that says subscribe on their YouTube channel. Thanks goes out to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can find them listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. And thanks to the team today, Sean, Adam, the other Adam, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Our social media is also there for you. Twitter is at GSR Channel, Facebook, Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram, GSRC_Graham. We've got a merchandise store that you can check out. A link is in the description below. It's gsrc.storenv.com. And as we mentioned, in a little less than a month's time, head on back for the Daytona 500. Coming back for more Daytona here to kick things off. It'll be February 2nd. I believe that is actually the runoffs that they have that determine the grid here. That'll be 7:45 p.m. Eastern that they will start that. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen. Check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. See you on the track.